Chapter 3189. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The infant corpse general. At that moment, all the treasures and primordial inheritance that Yi Xian's original body had obtained entered his consciousness and manifested as inheritance phantoms. Like a gathering of wind and clouds, the entire consciousness bloomed with boundless brilliance. The aura was extremely fierce, and the primordial aura was so thick that it was almost tangible. Screech! Another vicious howl that caused the heavens and earth to tremble rang out. At the top of the sea of consciousness, a dim light burst out, revealing a ferocious infant corpse. Its head was actually held in his arms, and it had been tightly closed all this time. The headless infant corpse had arrived. Following the arrival of the infant corpse body, the originally clamorous sea of consciousness had completely quietened down. Even the surging waves of the sea of consciousness had quietened down, and there was no longer the slightest fluctuation. Regardless of whether it was the demonic dragon phantom, the primordial Xianxia phantom that exuded an incomparably sharp aura, or the giant void tortoise floating in the consciousness, all of them retracted their auras and quietly looked at the headless infant corpse that had appeared at the top of the consciousness. Even the Thunder Emperor seal and the Tower of Antiquity's inheritance, which occupied the central domain of the sea of consciousness together with the infant corpse, tacitly retreated to the edge of the central domain even though they were right above the infant corpse to begin with. They quietly spun around. The infant corpse had just appeared, and all living things had submitted. Even the primordial inheritance pagoda and the Rai-D seal didn't dare show any disrespect and took the initiative to retreat. At that moment, the innate primordial spirit that had just been born from the primordial spirit mutated fruit was still sitting cross-legged in a corner of the consciousness with its eyes closed. It was in the inner circle, forming a triangle with the primordial inheritance pagoda and the Rai-D seal. At the outer circle were the void essence crystal, the spirit source core, the black gold dragon scale, the small golden bow, and the bloodline inheritance phantoms that appeared behind them. Of course, there were also the weeping soul bloodhorn and the demonic dragon phantom that were branded with the corpse lantern tattoo, indicating that they had been refined and subdued by the headless infant corpse. All of these formed the outer circle of the consciousness outside the inner circle of the triangle. At the top of all these was the headless infant corpse. At that moment, the ferocious head in its arms suddenly opened its eyes. Two dim lights shot out from the headless infant corpse's eyes and rushed toward the weeping soul bloodhorn and the demonic dragon phantom that had been refined by the headless infant corpse. Screech! Roar! A dragon phantom pagoda roar sounded at the same time. The demonic dragon phantom dragon phantom dragon phantom dragon phantom. The weeping soul bloodhorn then turned phantom dragon phantom dragon phantom dragon phantom bloodhorn turned phantom dragon phantom corpse, and disappeared. The headless primordial corpse general was the headless infant corpse generals. Was the Yi was headless corpse general. Was head. After the headless infant corpse was awakened, its eyes immediately opened again. This time, two streaks of ghostly light shot out and landed on the void essence crystal suspended above the knowledge sea. Buzz! With a violent buzzing sound, the void ladle, which had 1 large and 9 small golden horns, turned into a streak of black light and entered the inner circle of innate nascent divinities as well. Then, 2 ghostly lights shot out from the headless corpse lamp's bloody eyes. This time, they rushed to the Tower of the Remote Antiquity, which was hanging in the inner circle of the Sea of Consciousness. This time, the Tower of Desolation's legacy was slightly delayed for half a second, but in the end, it did not resist at all. It turned into a gray ray of chaotic light and rushed into the innate Yuan Shen. From then on, there were already a few treasures, skills, and ancient phantoms that had entered his innate Yuan Shen: the Tower of Desolate Ancient Heritage, the Revered Ladle, the Demon Dragon, and the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn. At this point, the selection of the headless corpse seemed to have come to an end. After his figure suddenly flashed, he directly disappeared from the top of Yi Xian's Sea of Consciousness, completely disappearing. In the next instant, the cultivation waves in his Sea of Consciousness began to gently surge again, and the huge void tortoise slowly sank into the depths of the Sea of Cultivation. The Rai-D seal, which had retreated to the edge of the inner window, moved again and hovered in the center of the Sea of Consciousness alone. Apart from the innate nascent divinities that were floating in the inner circle, there were 4 treasures and inheritance marks. They were the spirit source core, the void essence crystal, the black gold dragon scale, and the small golden bow that had been handed over to Yi Xian. Then, as the headless corpse left, the waterfall of spirit power in the spirit source core disappeared. The void essence crystal, which had a strong aura, also returned to its original state. The faint shadow of the desolate ancient Xianxia on the skyfall bow disappeared as well. The shadow of the divine dragon covered in countless black gold scales, which represented the black gold dragon scales variant bloodline, also disappeared in an instant. The sea of consciousness of Yi Xian's sea of consciousness regained its tranquility once again. The Rai Di seal hovering in the center of the sea of consciousness also silently rotated slowly. Only the 3-inch-tall innate nascent divinity that was sitting cross-legged on the side opened its eyes at this moment. At the same time, Yi Xian's original nascent divinity, which was in the clone's treasure body, seemed to have sensed something and withdrew from this state of introspection. Previously, although his original nascent divinity consciousness could not directly enter his original physical body to see what was happening in his sea of consciousness, he could vaguely feel all kinds of throbbing in his original body's sea of consciousness. This made Yi Xian feel apprehensive as he tried to guess what was happening in there. But now, after feeling the throbbing calmness, the energy that was pouring in from the clone's treasure body also disappeared. Yi Xian's original nascent divinity immediately withdrew from this state of introspection and sat cross-legged in the middle of the void-killing array and opened his eyes. Xiao! With a wave of his hand, Yi Xian's original physical body, which was left in the clone's treasure body, was summoned out. It was still sitting cross-legged in the state of cultivation with its eyes closed tightly. Without any hesitation, Yi Xian's original nascent divinity rushed out of the clone's treasure body. As the clone's treasure body closed its eyes, the scene looked extremely strange from the outside. Two identical Yi Xians sat cross-legged in the void about 10 feet apart. Both of them had their eyes closed tightly, like a pair of twins who were cultivating. In the next moment, Yi Xian's original nascent divinity rushed directly into the head of the original physical body. Without any delay, it went straight to the original body's sea of consciousness. The moment it rushed into the sea of consciousness, Yi Xian's heart suddenly felt a sense of telepathy. He subconsciously looked at the corner of the sea of consciousness, and just happened to meet the innate nascent divinity's eyes. In less than half an instant, Yi Xian's original nascent divinity had received a huge amount of information. Everything that happened in the original body's sea of consciousness appeared directly in his mind, which made Yi Xian extremely shocked. The original nascent divinity opened its mouth slightly. Obviously, it was shocked. Innate nascent divinity, was it born so quickly? Then so many strange things happened. The mysterious headless infant's corpse came to the sea of consciousness and started a battle? Chapter 3190. Benzin Gene Black Hole. Although the innate primordial spirit prepared for the devouring avatar had been successfully nurtured, he had yet to complete the fusion with the devouring avatar. He still needed to refine it. Therefore, after Yi Xian's primordial spirit recovered from the extreme shock, he immediately started a short communication with the innate primordial spirit. He asked the innate primordial spirit to go to the innate primordial spirit to refine the innate primordial spirit as soon as possible so that he could completely control the innate primordial spirit. At that time, Yi Xian's doppelganger, be it the treasure body or the primordial spirit, would have innate attributes and would be complete. Only the innate treasure body would have some flaws that needed to be repaired. With the fusion of the two, his future was destined to be limitless. At this moment, he felt very mysterious. It was as if he had another version of himself. Although it was called communication, there was no need for words. Whatever Yi Xian's original body thought of, the innate primordial spirit would immediately know. This was truly multitasking. They were independent of each other, yet there was an invisible line that connected the two soul cores, and it felt extremely profound. The innate Yuan Shen immediately left the spiritual sea of the original body and rushed out from the top of the original body's head. It entered the devouring treasure on the opposite side and began to refine and merge with it. Due to his familiarity with the process, there was clearly no suspense in the process. In fact, it was extremely fast. Yi Xian's primordial spirit was not worried at all. He had already put aside the matter on the other side and devoted himself to the study of his primordial spirit. Previously, when Yi Xian's primordial spirit left his body and entered the devouring treasure body, his primordial spirit threw his primordial spirit into the devouring treasure body for nourishment. His primordial spirit's primordial spirit was at the 6th great realm, the 7th level of the nebula realm. At this moment, his original primordial spirit had returned. Although it hadn't merged with his original body and was sitting in his sea of consciousness, it had already sensed the difference in his original body. Compared to before, it was clearly much stronger. On one hand, it was because it was being nurtured in the devouring treasured body. At the same time, it was because the devouring treasure body had used the devouring innate skill to absorb a large amount of energy, and a part of it was being's primordial spirit. Yi Xian could clearly feel that his primordial spirit was the primordial spirit. Primordial spirit. With the primordial spirit, the primordial spirit. The primordial spirits primordial void insight. Primordial spirit. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. Was he going to experience another explosive increase in his cultivation? Previously, his original body was already at the 7th level of the Nebula realm, which belonged to the late stage of this realm. Could it be that this time, he was going to rush to the 7th level of the Galaxy realm in one go? With this kind of exciting anticipation, Yi Xian's primordial spirit began to merge with his primordial spirit. Once the primordial spirit merged with his primordial spirit, it was equivalent to the primordial spirit of his primordial spirit returning. In this way, Yi Xian's primordial spirit, which had been sitting in the treasured body's primordial spirit, would bring various benefits such as baptism to his primordial spirit when the treasured body's primordial spirit skyrocketed. All these benefits would turn into substantial gains one after another. Once again, it would drive Yi Xian's primordial spirit to increase his primordial spirit's cultivation. In other words, Yi Xian's primordial spirit would have two opportunities to increase his primordial spirit's cultivation. One was the improvement of his primordial spirit's primordial spirit, and the other was the effect of the primordial spirit's return to his primordial spirit's primordial spirit. Under the influence of these two factors, it might not be as simple as just breaking through to primordial spirit's primordial spirit. It might even be possible to break through to primordial spirit's primordial spirit. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's breathing became heavier. The surprise was too great, and he couldn't stay calm. Very soon, the primordial spirit of the original body completed the integration and control of the original body's sea of consciousness. The original body's primordial spirit returned. In the next instant, the familiar sound of system notifications rang out in Yi Xian's mind. Although he was already mentally prepared, Yi Xian was still shocked. The notifications rang out one after another. Was this the effect of his inner body and primordial spirit merging together to form a cultivation base increase? It was simply too shocking. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through. Current realm. Nebula level 8. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through. Current realm. 9th order nebula peak. Ding! Congratulations host. The familiar system notifications rang out one after another, all of them reminding him that his cultivation base had broken through and leveled up. There was almost no gap between them. As soon as the first notification rang out, the next notification immediately rang out. In the end, Yi Xian became numb. He felt that everything was too dreamy and unreal. Even in the mysterious starry sky, there shouldn't be anyone who could use such a terrifying method to break through their cultivation base. It was too shocking. As the system notifications rang out in his mind one after another, Yi Xian felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He was completely dumbfounded. Whether it was his primordial spirit or his physical body, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was as dumb as a wooden chicken. He didn't know how much time had passed, but because Yi Xian's consciousness had fallen into a state of confusion, he couldn't feel the passage of time at all. It wasn't until the last system prompt sounded, which represented a boundary between realms. It could be said that when the two extremely sensitive words were captured by his consciousness, he felt as if he had just woken up from a dream. His entire body trembled slightly, and he finally returned to his senses. Ding! Congratulations to the host for breaking through. Current realm. Black hole level 1. This was the last system notification. After it rang out, Yi Xian's mind completely quieted down. The long-awaited peace made him feel as if he was in a dream again. Black hole level 1? He had actually broken through to the 8th major realm, the black hole level? From nebula level 7 to black hole level 1, this was a total of 12 minor realms, including an entire major realm, which was the 7th major realm, the galaxy level. Yi Xian probably didn't stay in this major realm for more than a minute. If this matter were to spread, no one would believe it even if they were beaten to death. No matter how freakish or monstrous one was, it couldn't be to this extent, right? He had broken through the 7th major realm in less than a minute? These thoughts flashed through Yi Xian's mind. At first, he was stunned and then overjoyed. Black hole level. He had finally broken through to the black hole level. As the 8th major realm in the starry sky, the black hole level could be said to be a widely recognized cultivation base watershed. Before the black hole level, even the 7th major realm, the galaxy level 9, couldn't be considered a true starry sky master. Only by breaking through to the black hole level could one be considered a true starry sky master. And Yi Xian had finally reached this step. Moreover, he had done it in the blink of an eye. Thinking about it, it was simply amazing. Chapter 3191. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation reforged battle armor. At this point, Yi Xian's original body and doppelganger had both leaped into the 8th great realm, the black hole realm. They could be considered true starry sky experts. Among them, the devouring doppelganger's cultivation had reached the 8th great realm, the great perfection of the rank 9 black hole realm. His original body had entered this great realm, the rank 1 black hole realm. However, in terms of overall combat strength, his original body, which had the headless infant's corpse and the Rai-D seal, was definitely more lethal than the devouring doppelganger. Even with the devouring doppelganger's terrifying devouring talent, the Tower of Antiquity's inheritance, the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, the demonic dragon's shadow, and the Void Ladle, the devouring doppelganger still could not shake his original body's combat strength. The headless infant's corpse alone was enough to suppress everything. After finishing this round of cultivation advancement, Yi Xian calmed his excitement and quickly opened his eyes. At this moment, he saw his devouring doppelganger, who was also sitting cross-legged in the void of the Great Killing Formation, opening its eyes slightly and meeting his gaze. It was obvious that during the period of time that his original body's cultivation had increased, the innate primordial spirit had already completed a perfect fusion with the innate treasure body. Yi Xian's first clone could be considered to have completely mastered it. This was not an ordinary doppelganger. Not only was this doppelganger's body an innate treasure body with a terrifying devouring talent, even the primordial spirit that had entered the doppelganger was complete and also belonged to the innate attribute. Even Yi Xian could not imagine how a complete primordial spirit of this level would develop after merging with the innate treasure body. He was full of anticipation. However, that was a matter for the future. Right now, there were still problems that needed to be solved. First, there was the system's title exploration mission. Second, there was the problem of escaping from the 6th palace of the 10 ultimates in the cultivation camp. Of course, the easiest and most direct way for Yi Xian to get out of here was to complete the system title quest. Once the exploration mission was completed, Yi Xian could leave immediately. The 6th palace of the 10 ultimates belonged to the human clan's cultivation camp. After all, this was still Universe 3. Yi Xian had already imprinted a set of interstellar coordinates in the Death Star vortex between the two camps in Universe 3. As long as this mission was completed, he could activate the interstellar coordinate jump ability at any time and leave directly. He instantly appeared in the Death Star vortex from the 6th palace of the 10 ultimates. In addition, with the completion of the exploration mission, Yi Xian's system title would be upgraded from Level 3 Interstellar Explorer to Level 4 Interstellar Pathfinder. Interstellar explorers would have the ability to jump between adjacent universes. Of course, there were two prerequisites. First, the two universes had to be connected by a natural wormhole, so they were considered to be adjacent universes. The second was that Yi Xian had to imprint a set of coordinates in the universe plane of the target beforehand. The black hole of life in the Devil's Star field in Universe 1 fulfilled both of these prerequisites. Before Universe 1 and Universe 3, there was a natural wormhole in the depths of the graveyard star field that connected them. They were indeed two adjacent universes. Yi Xian had also successfully imprinted a set of universal coordinates in Universe 1, which was inside the black hole of life. In other words, as long as this exploration mission was completed and his system title was upgraded to Level 4 Interstellar Pathfinder, Yi Xian would have more than one destination to choose from when he performed a coordinate jump between universes. Apart from the Death Star vortex between the two major forces in Universe 3, he could even perform an ultimate jump between universes directly from the 6th palace of the 10 ultimates of the cultivation camp to the black hole of life in Universe 1. Unfortunately, no matter how many options there were prerequisites. If he did not complete the system title quest this time, everything was just empty talk. Although there was nothing he could do about this, Yi Xian was actually looking forward to it. Even if he did not mention the system title quest, his interest in the 6th palace of the 10 ultimates was definitely not small. It was rare for him to come here, so he had to gain something. Of course, this kind of inheritance was absolutely important to a sect. Although the sixth palace of the 10 ultimates was only one of the 10 ultimate celestial palaces in the human cultivation camp, the fact that the sixth palace of the 10 ultimate celestial palaces had been able to stand tall for such a long time and always be ranked among the 10 ultimate celestial palaces in the human cultivation camp spoke volumes. His foundation was definitely not shallow. The so-called mysterious inheritance of the sixth palace must be extraordinary, even if one were to think with their heels. It just so happened that whether it was Huai Dongzi, Tian Chenzi, or the palace master of the sixth palace, Tian Chenzi, Yi Xian did not have a good impression of them. In fact, these guys were all scheming against him as soon as they met, including Tian Chenzi's ugly daughter. In Yi Xian's opinion, it was the same. Under such circumstances, if there was a chance to obtain the inheritance of the sixth palace of the 10 ultimates and then refine it, Yi Xian would definitely be willing to do it. Even if there was no system title quest this time, he would still be willing to do it without the slightest bit of psychological pressure. However, not feeling pressure was one thing, but being able to do it was another. The biggest problem in front of him was that until now, Yi Xian was still completely confused about what the so-called inheritance of the sixth palace of the 10 ultimates was. He had no idea at all what the sixth palace of the 10 ultimates inheritance was. However, 1 month later. No, it was already 25 days later. 5 days had passed since Yi Xian entered this killing formation of the void. According to his deduction, that old bastard Tian Chenzi would definitely make a big fuss about this so-called marriage alliance. Perhaps the news had already spread. This was an overt scheme. The other party planned to tie the immortal dynasty of the human race's science and technology faction to the sixth palace of the 10 ultimates worship. Even if it was only on the surface, it would be fine. After all, Prince Xian's current status was no small matter. If the marriage became a reality, what was done could not be undone. No matter how angry the immortal dynasty was, they could only hold their noses and swallow it. This concerned the face of the royal family. Some things on the table could not be ignored. In short, Yi Xian was clearly a valuable treasure in Tian Chenzi's eyes. As long as Yi Xian was trapped in the sixth palace of the 10 ultimates, he had a way to squeeze out all of Yi Xian's value bit by bit. Yi Xian originally did not fear him. It did not matter even if they fell out. With the headless infant corpse around, who would be afraid of who? However, the system title quest that he still had no clue about had become a binding spell over Yi Xian's head, binding him tightly. He could not even take a single step out of the great protective formation of the sixth palace of the 10 ultimates. How could Yi Xian turn the situation around? Chapter 3192. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Indestructible glass armor. Clenching his fist tightly, Yi Xian's eyes flashed with a bright light. For this, even if we have to directly shed all pretense of cordiality, we won't hesitate. However, before that, we still have to make some preparations and try our best to increase our ability to protect ourselves. After all, we can't leave the sect protecting formation. This restriction is too much of a headache. Muttering to himself, Yi Xian waved his hand and took out the indestructible glass armor and the purple mecha. He was ready to fuse them for the 6th time. Yi Xian's 3 basic treasures were now all Starry Sky epic grade treasures. Among them, his personal battleship, the Dongshu shuttle, had been fused 6 times. The demonic blood star tear sword had been fused 5 times, and the indestructible glass armor had also been fused 5 times. Yi Xian had always been extremely cautious about the subsequent fusion of these 3 basic treasures. After all, regardless of whether they'd successfully fused 5 or 6 times, there was at least one thing that was the same, and that was that their quality was already at the Starry Sky epic rank. One more step and they would be Starry Sky epic grade treasures. Starry Sky epic grade treasures were not to be trifled with. They were man-made. Whether it was a technological treasure from the technological faction, a treasure from the cultivator faction, or a treasure from the other Federation races, as long as it was man-made, there was basically no one that could reach Starry Sky epic grade. Yi Xian only knew of one, which was the life fortress left behind by the human race's technological pioneer, Xing Bo. In fact, he had not seen many Starry Sky epic grade treasures that were born naturally. The Rai Di seal was one of them. Therefore, Yi Xian did not have the slightest confidence that he would personally upgrade these 3 basic treasures that had followed him since he entered the Starry Sky environment to Starry Sky epic grade. He was still too weak now, and he had too few suitable resources at hand. If he became stronger in the future and had more treasures or materials of the same type that he could choose to fuse with, it might be possible. Therefore, ever since these three basic treasures had been fused 5 or 6 times and all of them had been raised to the epic rank of Starry Sky, Yi Xian no longer had any thoughts of fusing with them. Haste makes waste. It was fine as long as it was enough for now. After all, the next step would be to obtain a Starry Sky Supreme Treasure, which was no small matter. It was better to have nothing than to have something substandard. But now, facing such a helpless situation on the one hand, there was an 80% to 90% chance that they would fall out with the 6th Palace of 10 Ultimates. On the other hand, they were limited by the requirements of the system's title mission and could not leave. They could only stay within the range of the 6th Palace's Great Protection Formation. Under such circumstances, Yi Xian had to do his best to raise his defense to the maximum. And the armor was his last layer of protection. If this was before Yi Xian had obtained this purple combat armor, he might not have even thought of gritting his teeth and giving it a try. The key was that in the Death Star Vortex, that Genesis Realm expert of the Heaven's Legacy race had appeared in this purple combat armor. The effect was simply too stunning. In the face of the invisible tearing force of the Devourer treasured body, even the Starry Sky Fortress with a diameter of 100,000 meters collapsed instantly. Even Yi Xian's Dongshu shuttle, which was so far away, almost could not withstand it. However, this purple combat armor was not damaged at all, which was enough to show its quality. If venerated Void Ladle had not used its space bloodline divine ability to kill the expert of the Heaven's Legacy race inside the purple combat armor, this guy might not have been able to deal with it so easily. This level of combat armor, not to mention its attack power, was enough for Yi Xian to try fusing it with the indestructible glass armor again in terms of its sturdiness. Even if he could not upgrade the current Starry Sky Epic grade to the coveted Starry Sky Supreme Treasure grade this time, as long as the fusion was successful, the indestructible glass armor's defensive properties would be greatly improved. There was no doubt about it. And this was the safeguard Yi Xian needed the most at the moment. Thoughts flew in Yi Xian's mind. After considering everything thoroughly, the last trace of hesitation in his heart disappeared in an instant. At this moment, he had made up his mind. No matter what, he had to fuse the indestructible glass armor for the 6th time. He did not want to upgrade the grade. He only wanted the fusion to be successful. Fortunately, the fusion system had never disappointed him in this aspect. It had completed a total of 16 fusions for the 3 basic treasures, and all of them were successful. Thinking of this, the last bit of hesitation in Yi Xian's heart disappeared. He should have confidence in the Devourer system. With this thought in mind, he immediately ordered the Devourer system in his body to activate the supplementary fusion system immediately. At the same time, he directly took out the indestructible glass armor and the purple combat armor that was as tall as a small hill from the undying world in his body and threw them to the Devourer system. The next moment, the familiar sound of the system notification rang in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. A treasure that can be fused has been discovered. Indestructible glass armor. Starry Sky Epic grade. Completed 5 fusions. Purple Chong combat armor. Starry Sky Epic grade. Quality perfect. Do you want to fuse it immediately? Yi Xian's eyes lit up in an instant. Purple Chong combat armor? The name was quite good, revealing an iron-blooded aura. In addition, this combat armor produced by the Tianji clan was also of the Starry Sky Epic grade, which surprised even Yi Xian. After all, this combat armor was a purely man-made treasure. Moreover, it was not a refining treasure in the category of cultivators, but a technological heavy armor produced by the Tianji clan. Before this, Yi Xian's estimation of its grade was only of the Starry Sky Epic grade. He did not expect it to be a grade higher. It must be because the various materials used to forge this combat armor were extremely rare. The higher-ups of the Tianji clan must have spent a lot of effort to forge this purple Chong combat armor. Not to mention other things. Just the fact that it was of the Starry Sky Epic grade and the quality was perfect meant that this purple Chong combat armor was absolutely qualified to be fused with Yi Xian's indestructible glass armor. These were 2 rare Starry Sky Epic grade treasures, and they belonged to the same category. Once they were successfully fused, there might be a surprise. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's breathing could not help but quicken. He immediately ordered the system to fuse immediately. At the same time, he took out a large amount of star core origin from the undying world in his body. To ensure the success of the fusion, this time, he even threw in a level 99 colored star core. With such a big investment, the final result was obviously not going to be too big of a surprise. After waiting anxiously for 3 whole days, Just as Yi Xian was about to lose his patience, the familiar system notification sounded in his mind again. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The fusion is successful. Treasure obtained. Indestructible glass armor. Grade. Quasi-starry sky treasure. Rarity. Perfect. Indestructible glass armor? Its grade is actually a quasi-starry sky treasure? Chapter 3193. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Life Fortress. Before this, Yi Xian's battle armor had been called the Indestructible Glass Armor after the 5th successful fusion. But now, after adding the Purple Chong battle armor, the Tianji race's technological treasure of the same grade, and successfully completing the 6th fusion, the name of the battle armor had changed slightly. The difference of one word had changed from the previous Indestructible Glass Armor to the current Indestructible Glass Armor. Armor and armor. Although the meaning was roughly the same, if the latter was understood as the armor of a battle armor, then the meaning was completely different. Before this, it was merely a defensive treasure armor, but now, after being called armor, the battle armor of a battle armor, this treasure armor not only had defensive capabilities, but also offensive capabilities. After all, the Purple Chong battle armor used for the fusion was originally a battle armor that could shoot small death ray cannons. These attributes had obviously been inherited by Yi Xian's indestructible glass armor, causing it to be reborn. This could be seen from the fact that its grade had been upgraded from the epic star grade to the current quasi-star grade. In fact, even without considering this point, just looking at the appearance of this indestructible glass armor was enough to analyze its huge changes and attribute increase. The indestructible glass armor before was just a mighty battle armor, but now, after fusing with the Tianji race's technological treasure, the indestructible glass armor had clearly become a strange existence that was somewhere between a battle armor and a battle armor. Its entire body was purple, and its shape basically followed the bold streamlined style of the indestructible glass armor, but its size had increased by a large margin. Although it was not as terrifying as the Purple Chong battle armor's original height of 10 zhang, at this moment, when it stood inside Yi Xian's body, it was still a colossal object that was 30 zhang tall. In other words, it was nearly 10 meters tall. Normal battle armors, including the Purple Chong battle armor, had access cabins that could be opened from the outside. Yi Xian had done this back then. After opening the cabins, he had taken out the corpse of the Tianji race executive who had been killed inside. This meant that the original Purple Chong battle armor could be lost. However, the indestructible glass armor that had successfully completed the 6th system fusion did not have this problem. Although its 6th fusion was a treasure in the category of technology, with almost all of the technological elements in it, the indestructible glass armor that had completed the fusion was still a magic treasure, not a technological treasure, even though it was of the element attribute. It didn't have an entrance to the cabin, and it couldn't be opened from the outside. It was a transcendent artifact, and it had already been refined by Yi Xian. Yi Xian could activate it with just a thought and directly equip it outside his body. Indestructible glass armor. After calming down, Yi Xian suddenly shouted. With a thought, the indestructible glass armor in his body instantly turned into a purple light and rushed out, enveloping Yi Xian's body in less than half an instant. A mecha battle body that was 30 feet tall with purple light flowing all over its body suddenly appeared with a mighty aura. At this time, Yi Xian was in the inner cabin of the indestructible glass armor. Its space was not more, not less, and was perfectly compatible with his body, making him feel like he was controlling his own arm without any burdensome inconvenience. He couldn't test the defensive ability at this time, but since the elements of the battle armor had been integrated, the new offensive ability of this indestructible glass armor could be tested. In this regard, Yi Xian was quite looking forward to it. Subconsciously, Yi Xian raised his right arm and directly blasted out with a thought. Buzz! A low and violent sound of space trembling rang out. The front half of his huge right arm was instantly surrounded by a black antimatter energy light ball with a diameter of about 1 meter. Without waiting for Yi Xian to react, as he suddenly clenched his right fist, the energy light ball of the death ray cannon that enveloped his entire right forearm had already blasted out with a buzzing sound. In the blink of an eye, it crossed the endless void and directly wiped out a small planet in the distance, not leaving a single hair behind. This was clearly a miniature version of the death ray cannon of the Void Fortress. The death ray cannon of the Void Fortress had a diameter of 20,000 meters, but the death ray cannon blasted out by Yi Xian's arms had a diameter of 1 meter. Although the overall power was too much smaller, the advantage was that it was incomparable, and the charging time was almost negligible. It was one of the trump cards that was hard to come by. Previously, The purple Chong battle armor had also used this move, but the diameter of the death ray cannon blasted out was only about 1 foot. Now, it could reach 1 meter, presumably because it had merged with the indestructible glass armor and improved its quality. Ding! Warning! Warning! The indestructible glass armor's energy index decreased. Current index: 16%. Recommending charging. Just as Yi Xian was pleasantly surprised, the familiar voice of the devouring system suddenly rang out in his mind without warning. He was stunned for a moment, then understood. He immediately shook his head and smiled bitterly. With a thought, he retrieved a large amount of star core origin from his undying world and tossed it to the system, allowing it to charge the indestructible glass armor. It seemed that although this miniature death ray cannon was useful, its consumption was extraordinarily large. It was definitely a money-burning item. If possible, he would have to use it less in the future. With a thought, Yi Xian stored the indestructible glass armor in his undying world. After a moment of thought, he waved his hand and summoned the Dongshu shuttle. Originally, the Dongshu shuttle had a large number of demonic slaves, soldier ladles, and mosquito beasts, but now it was empty. Before the expedition to the Death Stellar Vortex, Yi Xian had moved Gui Hai Yi Dao and the rest of the demonic slaves and soldier ladles to the Black Mosquito. The Black Mosquito, Black Wind, and Thunderbolt Fort were all left behind in the Death Stellar Vortex. Yi Xian didn't have a single bastion with a diameter of 10,000 meters. Considering the various situations that he might encounter in the future, under certain circumstances, just a small private battleship might not be enough to deal with them. Thus, after pondering for a moment, Yi Xian decided to take advantage of this opportunity to make use of the life fortress, the Dragon Field. After putting away the Dongshu shuttle, Yi Xian waved his hand and summoned the wild dragon fortress that he'd been keeping in his undying world all this time. When he first obtained this life fortress, it was only a small fortress with a diameter of 5,000 meters. But now, ever since he obtained the world bug's growth energy from Yi Xian, the world bug that formed the entire fortress could be said to have grown rapidly. At this moment, when he took out the starfield, what appeared before his eyes was actually a giant fortress with a diameter of 20,000 meters. Although there was still a gap between them and a small stronghold with a diameter of 50,000 meters, Yi Xian was already extremely satisfied with the speed at which the entire world's insects were able to grow from a diameter of 5,000 meters to a size of 20,000 meters in such a short period of time. From the outside, the wild dragon fortress didn't look very different from any other fortress. But in essence it was completely different. Chapter 3194. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Immortal Purple Spiritual Root. After checking for a while and confirming that all the attributes of the Starfield Life Giant Castle were in their best condition, Yi Xian's heart slightly relaxed. With a wave of his hand, he once again stored it into his body. Then, he fell into a short period of contemplation. Now that his doppelgangers were formed and they were both in the 8th stage of the Black Hole Realm, should he use his original body or the devouring doppelganger to get out of this killing void formation and face everything that came after? On the surface, the devouring doppelganger's cultivation was slightly higher and had reached the peak of the 9th stage of the Black Hole Realm. However, in terms of overall battle strength, the devouring doppelganger was obviously inferior to the original body that was protected by the headless infant corpse. Moreover, the devouring doppelganger had just advanced to a new stage and needed to stabilize it. Even though it was the same for the main body, and the breakthrough this time was even greater than that of the devouring avatar, reaching 12 minor levels, this kind of improvement was achieved through the accumulation of the main body's physical body in recent times and the baptism of the main body's soul. There was no such problem in stabilizing the cultivation base at all. After considering this, Yi Xian finally made a decision. He waved his hand and stored the devouring doppelganger into his original body. Then, his figure flashed and he was already far away in the blink of an eye. This void-killing array was an independent small space that was like a blessed land. It was similar to the desolate ancient cage that was connected to the forbidden valley of the Demon Emperor Star. The experts from the 6th Palace that were guarding the nodes of the stars in this enormous killing array, and controlling the killing array to kill their enemies had all left after Yi Xian's arrival. They had also sealed the entrance and exit. Otherwise, Yi Xian would not have directly taken out his original body from the devouring doppelganger after solving everything. If Xianxia found out, there would be some trouble. At this moment, everything in the killing void formation had been purged. According to Xianxia's words, Yi Xian could leave as soon as he got close to the void passage. Whoosh! With a flash of brilliance, As if a transmission formation had been activated, Yi Xian disappeared in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already at the peak of the mountain where the ancestral land of the sixth palace of 10 ultimates was located. It was located in the north, but it was still within the range of the sixth palace's protective formation. As far as the eye could see, there were palaces and pavilions in sight. This was the core ancestral land of the sixth palace of the 10 ultimates. Although it was located at the peak, the buildings were continuous. With a casual glance, the buildings in the 3 directions in front of him were at least 100 miles away. Even on the north side of the peak behind him, the pavilions that he could see were 30 to 40 miles away. The edges were submerged in a dense fog, and he couldn't see the end. Although Yi Xian had been granted a certain level of authority and could walk freely in this area, there were still some areas that he couldn't set foot in. As he spread out his divine sense, he casually swept through the area and sensed at least 7 or 8 areas with a strong sense of danger. Even though the entire peak was shrouded in the sect-protecting formation of the sixth palace of 10 absolutes, these 7 or 8 places were all protected by independent restrictions. With the authority that Yi Xian had obtained, he would definitely not be able to set foot in them. Although he wanted to explore, he finally gave up after pondering for a while. Now, the only goal he had to search for in this group of palaces was the inheritance of the sixth palace of the 10 absolutes. Before starting the operation, he must have accurate information. If he ran around like a headless fly, he would only alert the enemy. Right, demon spirit pupil. Thinking about it, Yi Xian's mind suddenly flashed a light, and his eyes lit up. I almost forgot about it. Previously, in the ancient cage connected to the Forbidden Valley of the Devil Emperor Star, Yi Xian accidentally saw the strange scene in the depths of the corpse pool with the help of the demon spirit pupil. Then, he had the subsequent good fortune of obtaining a large number of multiple pupil sense crystals. Along the way, he used the weak innate chaotic power contained in the endless corpse liquid to temper his body with the Golden Divine Dragon Clan's body tempering technique to officially activate the Divine Dragon bloodline. Now, in order to find the mysterious inheritance of the sixth palace of 10 absolutes, the demon spirit pupil's origin tracing should also have a miraculous effect. At least, he should be able to see more clearly the 7 or 8 places protected by the second layer of independent restrictions. It was very likely that he would find the real hiding place of the mysterious inheritance of the sixth palace. Thinking of this, Yi Xian no longer hesitated and immediately activated the demon spirit pupil that was like an invisible vertical eye deep in his glabella. Closing his eyes slightly, an invisible gray light shot out from the center of his glabella, carrying a mysterious and indescribable aura. Like an invisible searchlight, it swept into the distance. The origin tracing was activated in an instant. After a round of examination, the result disappointed Yi Xian greatly. These 7 or 8 places protected by the second layer of independent restrictions, although each had its own mysteries, according to his analysis, they should not be the place where the mysterious inheritance of the sixth palace of 10 absolutes was enshrined. However, even though this inspection was fruitless, Yi Xian keenly discovered a strange situation. The spirit energy that filled the air at the peak of the giant mountain that was enveloped by the sect protection formation seemed to have some sort of inherent law, and all of it gathered towards a single location. It was very obscure. If Yi Xian hadn't activated the origin tracing, such a slow flow of spiritual aura, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to detect it at all. What surprised him even more was that the spiritual aura of the entire peak gathered in the direction of the small harem courtyard where he had arrived before. To be precise, it was the purple bamboo forest on the edge of the small courtyard. At that time, Yi Xian fled here in a hurry and was caught off guard. He even bumped into a purple giant bamboo as thick as his waist. At that time, he felt that this purple bamboo forest was a little unusual, but he was uneasy and didn't think much about it. Now it seemed that this place was clearly strange, and there must be a secret. Yi Xian's heart was moved, and he examined again. The origin tracing power of the demon soul pupil was fully activated. Gradually, his sight passed through the bamboo forest and strangely went deep into the ground. He caught a piece of purple bamboo root that was only the length of a palm and the thickness of 3 fingers. Further down, there was a dark shadow as thick as ink. It seemed to have spread beyond the edge of the entire peak. Moreover, this black shadow that was as thick as ink was not only boundless, it was also buried deep under the giant peak. Its essence was actually something that even the power of the demon soul eye's ability to see through, causing Yi Xian to be greatly surprised. While he was in a daze, the familiar system prompt sounded again in Yi Xian's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have discovered the inheritance treasure of the 6th Palace of 10 Absolutes. Immortal Purple Spiritual Root. Attribute: Innate Spiritual Root. Grade: Starry Sky Treasure. Do you want to collect it immediately? Jie. Immortal Purple Spiritual Root? Innate Spiritual Root? A piece of bamboo? Was this the mysterious inheritance treasure of the 6th Palace of 10 Absolutes? It was actually buried so simply in the depths of a purple bamboo forest? Chapter 3195. A single stone raises 1,000 ripples. Xian was pleasantly surprised. But he didn't lose his head because of this. He immediately withdrew the demon soul pupil's incorporeal probing ability and silently leaped into the air. He leisurely flew towards the purple bamboo forest in the distance. Although the system had given him a prompt on whether or not he should immediately collect it, indicating that he could basically successfully collect it now, due to the distance and the fact that this was the core ancestral land of the 6th Absolute Palace, Xian really did not dare to take the risk. In addition, the enormous black shadow below the dark purple spirit root caused him to feel rather uneasy. It was best not to act rashly before he had thoroughly investigated its origins. After all, there was only one chance. If he failed, it would be hopeless to try again. While he was deep in thought, a majestic pressure suddenly descended from the sky like a heavy waterfall. It unceremoniously enveloped Xian's body and immediately seeped into his body. His expression changed. Before Xian could react, the corpse lamp tattoo on his left chest suddenly heated up. Then, the terrifying pressure that was about to seep into his body seemed to have been startled and quickly retreated without any gains. Ha! It can even resist the probing of my divine sense. Could it be that this devouring treasured body has other mysteries? In the next moment, a soft gasp of surprise rang out from the east. Xianxia stepped out of the void with a doubtful expression on his face. His eyes flickered as he studied Xian from head to toe. It's been a short 7 days, and you're progressing quite well. However, after devouring so much energy, you've only advanced by a small level? Do you think I will believe you? You are quite good at hiding your cultivation level. It seems that I have misunderstood you. The power that blocked my divine sense was just a secret technique that you have mastered. It has nothing to do with the devouring treasure body. After saying this, seeing Xian's gloomy and extremely unfriendly face, Xianxia immediately chuckled. Now you and I are grasshoppers on the same rope. I don't want to say anything else, but you are a smart person. I think you won't make a mistake. Otherwise, I'm afraid those Federation clans that you devoured as cultivation resources will not let you go easily. I need a place full of spirit energy to stabilize my cultivation level. I won't accompany you. Xian pretended to be angry. His eyes flashed as he replied in a cold voice. Then, he turned around and walked towards the purple bamboo forest. Xianxia Editor. Tennish Translation. Haha, it's just to stabilize your cultivation level. I will personally arrange a spirit gathering array for you. Don't forget that you and I are not outsiders. I don't have the fortune to enjoy a spirit gathering array personally arranged by a universe master. It would be bad if the spirit gathering array turned into a spirit absorbing array. Xian didn't even look back. He didn't slow down and responded with indignation. Then, he flew away with a cold snort. Don't worry. The purple bamboo forest where I stayed before is not bad. At least it's safe. Humph. As soon as he finished speaking, his back had already disappeared. He plunged into the rare purple bamboo forest. It should be just a coincidence. Even if it isn't, this kid won't be able to make any waves. Although the purple bamboo forest is an extremely important place, there is after all protection deep underground. It's fine. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. He hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he was relieved. He didn't think too much about it. While muttering to himself, he stepped into the void and disappeared. It had been 10 days since the incident in the Death Star region, leaving aside the Tianji clan from the First Universe. During these 10 days, the human clan of the Third Universe was in an uproar. Even the situation of the entire myriad Luo Federation was turbulent. This time, the various clans of the Federation had gained a lot in the Death Star region. All kinds of rare minerals and devouring origin crystals in the Death Star vortex had gushed out like a geyser. All the fleets present had more or less gained something, far more than what they had gained in the past 100 years. But in the end, An unexpected accident had wiped out almost all the fleets. Except for some starry sky fortresses and small fortresses that had escaped, the other thousands of large and small battleships and fortresses had either disappeared by teleportation or were forced to escape into the Death Star vortex. This included Prince Xian of the Eternal Dynasty, who had just been sent to the Death Star region. It could be said to be a heavy loss. It was definitely a big event. After that, some of the surviving experts of the various clans of the Federation questioned why the Tenju Celestial Palace was stationed in Black Heaven City in the Death Eastern region. They said that this matter must be related to Black Heaven City and demanded an explanation. But Huai Dongzi flatly denied it and even made a countercharge, blaming Prince Xian's victorious legion for the death of the young palace master of the 6th palace of the Tenju Celestial Palace, Xianxia. Then, some of the top experts of the various clans of the Federation who had heard the news entered the Death Star vortex together. Finally, they received bad news. All the battleships and fortresses that had rushed into the Death Star vortex to avoid the calamity, including several Starry Sky fortresses and all the experts of the Starry Sky inside, were all annihilated. Something ominous seemed to have happened in the Death Star vortex. All the battleships had collapsed. The endless resources and wreckage of the battleships, including the corpses of all the experts of the Starry Sky, had all withered and withered, their energy completely drained. Unfortunately, there was no trace to indicate that all this was related to Black Heaven City. But even so, the higher-ups of the various clans of the Federation of the Second Universe who had heard the news still united together to put pressure on Black Heaven City, and demanded an explanation from the Tenju Celestial Palace. In particular, several extremely powerful clans of the Federation of the Second Universe, such as the Wood Spirit Clan and the Inji Clan, had lost one or two of their top experts of the 14th realm, the Cosmic Light realm, in the Death Star field. The devouring source crystals and a large number of rare minerals that they had originally obtained were all in vain. They had not really obtained them at all. Naturally, they were extremely angry. These top experts of the Federation of the Second Universe gathered in the Death Star field. While threatening Black Heaven City, they also submitted an application for arbitration to the headquarters of the Federation. With a two-pronged approach, they swore not to give up, covering the entire vast starry sky of the Third Universe with a layer of dark clouds. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Under such circumstances, the Immortal Dynasty, which had remained silent because of the small loss of Su Lao City's fleet, seemed to have shown signs of expressing their stance on this matter. The different voices within the Tenju Celestial Palace had not stopped either. Under the dual pressure from both inside and outside, the 6th palace of the Tenju Celestial Palace could be said to be under heavy pressure. At this time, taking advantage of the fact that the Immortal Dynasty had not officially expressed their stance, and the different voices within the Tenju Celestial Palace had not formed a united front, the 6th palace master, Xianxia, suddenly threw a heavy bomb. 20 days later, the Immortal Dynasty's Prince Xian would marry Xianxia's beloved daughter, Zhao Lingyang, in the ancestral land of the 6th palace. He sincerely invited all friendly forces and allies to attend the ceremony. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples, and the entire Third Universe instantly exploded. The Immortal Dynasty, which had originally wanted to express their stance, once again fell silent. The different voices within the Tenju Celestial Palace also disappeared. After all, the marriage between the 6th palace and the Immortal Dynasty was already the general trend of the human clan. It was just that the various clans of the Federation of the Second Universe could not stir up any waves without solid evidence. Chapter 3196. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Grand Wedding Ceremony. After Xianxia announced the wedding of his beloved daughter to Prince Xian, the situation immediately reversed. Although the various races of the Federation from the Second Universe still insisted on investigating the truth, at least the dissenting voices within the 10 ultimate celestial palaces and the everlasting dynasty disappeared. This alone was enough to dissolve the heavy pressure that the 6th palace of the 10 ultimate celestial palaces was under. In the blink of an eye, the situation in Universe 3 had reversed. Originally, all the experts in the starry sky were discussing the unexpected changes in the Death Star vortex. But now, the hottest topic had become Prince Xian's wedding ceremony. Although Prince Xian had been sent to the Death Star Zone, he was, after all, a direct descendant of the royal family, and his reputation was extraordinary. Suddenly announcing his marriage without the permission of the royal family elders was a crime of disobedience. In addition, the Elder Cabinet had already made it clear that he was not allowed to step out of the Death Star Zone or return to the everlasting star of the imperial capital. Now, not only had he left the Death Star Zone, but he had also run to the Cultivation Camp Star Zone. Even if he had encountered an accident in the Death Star vortex, such as a spatial crack, he still had to give a clear explanation to the elder cabinet of the imperial capital. Therefore, even if the royal family did not approve of the marriage, they still issued an edict in the end. The royal family's elder cabinet, Long Ziwen, was ordered to represent the royal family and go to the 6th palace of the 10 ultimate celestial palaces. As soon as this edict was issued, the 5 princes' manors on the everlasting star of the imperial capital immediately laughed in schadenfreude. Old 18th, let's see how you deal with this. Patriarch Ziwen is clearly condemning you. I'm afraid he's going to make a scene at the wedding ceremony. Ha ha ha. It's a pity that I can't go and see for myself. It must be very interesting. This kid is really courting death. He's been sent to the Death Star zone, but he still doesn't stop. As soon as he arrived, he offended Patriarch Ziwen. Then, he didn't care about the face of the imperial capital and did such a thing. He must be tired of living. If that's the case, I'm afraid that Prince Xian's legend will be completely destroyed. He will become a negative example. This is the result of being arrogant. In addition, when the news of the marriage reached the heavenly underworld star of the heavenly underworld empire, the master of the Xianyuan family, Xianyuan Ziying, and the others immediately roared furiously in the backyard of the Xianyuan family. Little bastard. You really aren't a good person. How long has it been? He's actually doing it again. What a playboy. Long Xian, I'm not done with you. Ah. Sigh, this brother-in-law of mine doesn't have it easy either. This is the trouble of being a celebrity. Just a small matter like the blowing of leaves in the wind actually caused such an uproar. Other than him, there's no one else. At the same time, Huai Dongzi led the troops of Black Firmament City and withdrew from the Death Star Zone. The fleets and experts of the other forces and races that had gathered in this star zone also withdrew. This was because the Death Star vortex, which was supposed to be the source of the devouring source crystal, was already empty. It was basically impossible to find any more devouring source crystals in the Death Star Zone. In other words, this important resource, whose purpose had not been disclosed for the time being, was considered extinct in the Death Star Zone. The originally bustling Death Star Zone quieted down in the blink of an eye. However, Prince Xian's Triumph City was still the same as before. The strange thing was that although Naples wanted to lead his fleet to the cultivation camp to pick up Yi Xian after the news of the marriage from the 6th Palace of 10 Ultimates came, this matter was directly stopped by the wretched Mosquito Butcher. The reason was not given at all. Since Mosquito Butcher's cultivation strength was exposed, he was now the guardian of Triumph City. If he did not agree, no matter how much Naples tried, it was useless. In the end, he could only leave the matter unsettled. Yi Xian did not know about all this at first. However, since he entered the purple bamboo forest, some experts from the 6th Palace of 10 Ultimates would come every other day. They would walk around the edge of the bamboo forest and observe the situation inside. Occasionally, some of them would talk about the recent situation outside. Yi Xian listened a few times and roughly grasped the situation. For the past few days, Yi Xian seemed to be sitting cross-legged in the purple bamboo forest, seemingly cultivating and consolidating his cultivation. However, in fact, he had been secretly investigating the immortal purple spirit root deep underground, as well as the huge black shadow in the area below. Although he had not been able to find out the details of the huge black shadow, if it was just to collect the immortal purple spirit root, he had more than 80% confidence. Just as he was about to make a move, Yi Xian suddenly changed his mind. Since this so-called wedding banquet was so lively, with guests from all over the place, he might as well make a big fuss and trick that old ghost Tian Qianzi. Otherwise, it would be difficult to get rid of the resentment in his heart. After making the decision, Yi Xian quietly took out his devouring doppelganger while no one was paying attention. After concealing all the aura with the perfect vibration secret technique, he ordered it to quietly go underground. However, he did not go too deep to avoid alerting the enemy. He always felt that the huge mysterious black shadow deep underground was a little strange, and a feeling of uneasiness lingered in his heart. Time passed in a flash. In the blink of an eye, the wedding date was approaching. 3 days ago, a large number of disciples in the 6th Palace of 10 Ultimates had already begun to busy themselves with decorating the entire 6th Palace Peak's ancestral land with a festive atmosphere. As far as the eye could see, there was a grand bright red wedding dress. 2 days before the wedding date, Zhao Lingyang had already ended her seclusion this time. With a light veil covering her face, she came to the purple forest bamboo where Yi Xian cultivated under the protection of more than 10 maids behind her. she softly called out to her handsome brother. Her tone clearly revealed a sense of uncontrollable excitement and joy, and even her voice was slightly trembling. Yi Xian was so scared that he shrank his neck. Not only did he not dare to make a sound, but he also retreated further into the depths of the bamboo forest. The ugly ghost was wearing a veil. Half of her body was hugging the lute, and half of her face was covered. The shocking effect of her appearance must be even more extraordinary. The white hairs on his back faintly stood up. In the end, after the group of maids called out to no avail, they turned around and left while giggling. Perhaps it was because they were preparing for the wedding 2 days later, but from this day on, the group of maids never entered the small courtyard again. This gave Yi Xian some peace and quiet. The next night, Xianxia sent someone to deliver a set of bright red wedding clothes and left a message. Tomorrow is the wedding ceremony. At that time, guests from all directions will arrive. The bridegroom must arrive early to welcome the guests. After that, the disciples of the palace will come to welcome them. Yi Xian sneered. He left behind the bright red wedding clothes and did not say anything else. At night, the guests of the other 9 celestial palaces arrived one after another. Among them, there was even a palace master who had a close personal relationship with Xianxia. The rest were all vice palace masters who came as representatives and were properly arranged by Xianxia. As for Elder Long Ziwen of the immortal dynasty of the Science and Technology faction, as well as the top experts from various Federation clans of the Second Universe, presumably, they would only arrive at the wedding ceremony the next day. Chapter 3197. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Goddamned Hob. The next morning, Yi Xian got up and left the purple bamboo forest. As for the devouring doppelganger, it stayed behind and hid all of its aura, lying dormant under the bamboo forest. He didn't change his red wedding robe at all, and it was directly turned into powder. After leaving the bamboo forest, he casually strolled in the surrounding secluded areas, as if the lively scene on the peak of the giant mountain had nothing to do with him. At this time, the inside and outside of the main hall of the 6th Palace of 10 Ultimates, which was located in the central area of the giant mountain peak, was already bustling with noise and excitement. The large square outside the hall was filled with people. Although there weren't many people in the hall, they were all high-level leaders of various forces and clans. The lineup was quite luxurious. Xianxia was full of smiles as he sat in the seat of honor in the middle of the main hall. The row on the left was filled with guests from the other 9 palaces, who were at least at the level of deputy palace master. The row on the right was from various forces and clans outside the 10 Ultimate Celestial Palace. Among them, the imperial family's elder, Long Ziwen, who represented the immortal dynasty, sat close to Xianxia. Below him were the high-level representatives of the Second Universe's Federation, such as the Inji clan and the Wood Spirit clan. There were more than 10 of them. This result didn't include the many accompanying experts standing behind them. Otherwise there would be more people. All of them had a straight face and looked quite unfriendly. Even Long Ziwen, who belonged to the same human clan as the 10 Ultimate Celestial Palace, had a dark expression. He was waiting for Yi Xian to appear so that he could interrogate him on the spot. The other experts of the Second Universe's Federation also had the same thought. Yi Xian was the only survivor among all the experts who entered the death and death spiral. They had to ask Yi Xian face to face regarding the secrets and inside information. However, the latter had yet to appear. Even if they were angry, they could only force themselves to hold it in. Otherwise, without solid evidence, they couldn't find any clues. It would be rude to disturb the situation, and it would be unreasonable. Brother Xianxia, Long Xian is the main character today. Why hasn't he appeared yet? Isn't this a little neglectful of the guests? As if he was getting impatient from waiting, a high-ranking member of the Oxhead race snorted and went straight to the point, asking about Prince Xian. Xianxia subconsciously furrowed his brows. He had already sent people to search for him. They should have found him by now, but for some reason, he still hadn't shown himself. Just at this moment, Yi Xian, who was dressed in a white robe, slowly walked in from the main entrance of the 6th Palace as if he was strolling idly. He was dressed in plain white clothes, and it was impossible to tell that he was the main character of today's wedding banquet. His expression was also extremely indifferent, without a trace of joy. Xianxia furrowed his brows once again. The anger in his heart had already started to boil. This brat seemed to be a thorn in his side. He needed to be taught a lesson. deliberately not wearing a festive red robe. This was clearly going against him, wanting to embarrass him. 18th brother, how dare you? Without waiting for Xianxia to speak, Long Ziwen, who was sitting to his right, glared at him and suddenly scolded. As a direct descendant of the immortal royal family, who allowed you to privately form a marriage alliance with others? Do you still have any respect for the Dorm Elder Pavilion? Humph, you were just sent to the Death Star Zone, and you immediately left the place of your own accord. Are you trying to betray the royal family? This interrogation was extremely harsh. The moment he opened his mouth, it was the crime of betrayal. Long Ziwen's attack at this moment was not only to embarrass Xianxia, but also because of his personal grudge with Yi Xian. The dozen or so high-ranking members of the Federation of the Second Universe looked at each other. They were not in a hurry and just watched coldly. The high-ranking members of the Celestial Palace of the Cultivation Camp on the left were like Xianxia. Their faces darkened. They were all from the human race, and Long Ziwen had come on behalf of the immortal royal family. His attack at this moment was clearly the royal family's intention. This was not giving them any face. Among them Murongju, the master of the 7th Palace of the 10 Ultimates, who was on good terms with Xianxia, harumphed coldly. Unfortunately, before he could reply coldly, Yi Xian, who'd already stepped into the main hall, curled his lips and choked. He rolled his eyes and glared at Long Ziwen. You old bastard, you really can't spit out ivory from a dog's mouth. Which eye of yours saw me privately forming a marriage alliance with others? And who told you that this prince deliberately left the Death Star field? Has your brain been eaten by a rock in a latrine pit? That day, so many people saw me helplessly hide in the Death Star vortex and then appear in the 6th Palace of the 10 Ultimates. Can't you see the trick behind this? Do you really think that I want to come to this wretched place? If I didn't accidentally fall into a trap while running for my life, how could I have been teleported here? To think that you are an elder of the imperial family. When you saw the juniors of the imperial family being detained and imprisoned by others, you didn't even think about rescuing them. Instead, you scolded your own people first, calling you cheap and praising you. Hua! Without waiting for Yi Xian to finish speaking, the hall was already in an uproar and completely exploded. The meaning of his words was already very obvious. The so-called marriage alliance was simply forced, and it was not his intention at all. More importantly, these words also revealed the reason why Yi Xian appeared in the 6th Palace of the 10 Ultimates. He was actually teleported directly from the Death Star vortex. However, within the Death Star vortex, the upper echelons of the Federation of the Second Universe had already carefully investigated it and did not see the so-called teleportation array at all. From the looks of it, it was clearly a one-time one-way teleportation array. Such a teleportation array had inexplicably appeared in the Death Star vortex, and the destination of the teleportation was the 6th Palace of the 10 Ultimates. Even if this was not irrefutable evidence, it could at least be listed as a major point of suspicion. The upper echelons of the Federation of the Second Universe immediately perked up. They had finally found conclusive evidence. For a time, the auras in these people's bodies surged, and their eyes shone with a bright light. They all turned their heads and looked at Xianxia, who was sitting at the top of the main hall. As for the latter at this moment, it was as if he had been struck by lightning. He opened his mouth wide in shock as he stared blankly at Yi Xian, who had an indifferent expression on his face. His entire mind was in a complete mess. This brat. Was he not afraid of death? He actually dared to reveal the truth in public? Could it be that he had forgotten that he was the one who personally cleaned up the killing void array to silence them? What are you staring at? You can't be dumbfounded, right? This prince hasn't finished speaking yet. Turning his head to look at Xianxia, Yi Xian curled his lips again. He raised his hand and pointed at Xianxia, saying, "This old bastard is not a good person." He wanted to use this prince to relieve the pressure, but he was worried that this prince would not like his ugly daughter. In the end, he played dirty and threw this prince directly into the void-killing array on the north side of the peak. They destroyed most of the thousands of battleships, fortresses, and strongholds inside, but they deliberately left a few small fries for this prince to clean up. Saying that it was a sign of allegiance, did they really think this prince would be scared? Boom! As soon as these words were spoken, the originally noisy main hall instantly exploded. This time, apart from Xianxia and the upper echelons of the 10 Ultimate Celestial Palace, even the upper echelons of the various races of the Federation on the right side of the main hall, including Long Ziwen, looked at Yi Xian differently. There was a strong sense of strangeness. Chapter 3198. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio. How infuriating. As Yi Xian threw out one bomb after another, the entire Sixth Palace's main hall was in an uproar. Everything happened too suddenly. Not to mention Xianxia and the other higher-ups of the Celestial Palace, even the higher-ups from the various clans of the Federation of the Second Universe, as well as the Imperial Elder Long Ziwen, who represented the Eternal Dynasty, were completely at a loss. Their minds were in chaos, and for a moment, they did not know how to react. At this moment, Zhao Lingyang, who was dressed in red and had a red veil covering her face, walked in from the side of the main hall under the protection of more than a dozen personal maids. Just as she stepped into the hall, she happened to hear Yi Xian's words. Therefore, as her body shook violently, Zhao Lingyang immediately stopped in her tracks. She was stunned for a moment or so, then she covered her face and sobbed, turned around and ran away. Miss, wait. This is too infuriating. This guy actually called you an ugly ghost. Could it be that he's blind? This is too disappointing. Prince Xian, you actually dared to bully Sister Lingyang. Little Huan will never like you again. More than a dozen maids stamped their feet. Some of them directly chased after her, while others turned around and glared fiercely at Yi Xian. After leaving behind some words, they turned around and left. Long Xian, you've gone too far. You're killing me. Before Yi Xian could react, Tian Chenzi, who was sitting at the head of the main hall, suddenly stood up in shock. His face was ashen, and his eyes were bursting with an undisguised strong killing intent. As he roared, he waved his hand, and the huge Sixth Palace's main hall strangely disappeared in an instant. The surrounding environment had completely changed. Although they were still in the central territory at the peak of the giant mountain, there was a continuous rumbling of thunder above their heads. Thunderclouds rolled, and a murderous aura rose. The great protective array of the Sixth Palace was fully activated, and everyone in the main hall was enveloped by the power of the great array. Almost at the same time, Tian Chenzi, who had stood up in shock, and the other 9 upper echelons of the Heavenly Palace suddenly withdrew. Their figures hid within the sect-protecting array of the Sixth Palace, appearing and disappearing within the lingering mist of the array, making it difficult to see clearly. In the distance, the disciples of the Sixth Palace who were in charge of different affairs also shot out. They were naturally very familiar with the great protective formation of their own sect. In the blink of an eye, more than half of them had disappeared. In the blink of an eye, only the higher-ups of the Federation of the Second Universe, who were originally sitting on the right side of the main hall of the Sixth Palace, and the accompanying experts were left outside the hall. There were hundreds of experts in total, including Long Ziwen and Yi Xian. Caught off guard, they were all trapped in the great protective array of the Sixth Palace. This was clearly the rhythm of silencing them on the spot after they were exposed. Although it was difficult to clean up the aftermath, it was better than having the truth exposed on the spot. If that was the case, the Sixth Palace of the 10 Ultimates would become the target of public criticism in the entire Wan Luo Federation. No, they had to include the overlord of the First Universe, the Tianji clan. In this way, there would be no place for them in the 3 universes. Even the entire 10 Ultimates Heavenly Palace would be implicated and would be affected. Because of this, when Tian Chenzi suddenly made up his mind to take such a risk, although the 9 upper echelons from the other Heavenly Palaces were shocked and even unwilling, none of them really objected. This was a matter of great importance, and they could not be considerate. As the huge main hall of the Sixth Palace disappeared in an instant, the roar of thunder resounded in the sky, and an invisible pressure poured down. The accompanying experts of the higher-ups of the various races of the Federation, who were originally outside the main hall, had already gathered behind Long Ziwen and the other top experts. Only Yi Xian stood alone on the other side of the Peak Ouyang domain, as if he was unwilling to be associated with them. He stood alone and proudly opposite them. There was no surprise or joy on his face, and he was calm and indifferent. Unexpectedly, there was a kind of peerless and independent supreme aura that made people look askance. It was also at this time that the group of Cosmic Light Realm experts, including Long Ziwen, after their faces darkened, the cultivation in their bodies instantly surged, and they had already raised their voices and reprimanded sternly. Tian Chenzi, is your Sixth Palace going to betray and become an enemy of the entire Federation? In my opinion, I'm afraid it's not just the Sixth Palace, right? I'm afraid that the entire Tenju Celestial Palaces has the same intention. Are the 2 camps of the human clan finally going to split? From now on, the Federation will have one more enemy. The human clan's camp of cultivators? I advise you not to make a mistake. In order to cover up your mistakes, you didn't hesitate to drag the huge 6th palace and even the entire 10 celestial palaces down with you. Xianxia, have you thought it through? Do you really have the strength to kill us all in one fell swoop? Fortunately, the Yingji clan and the Wood Spirit clan sent 2 supreme experts of the universe realm. Otherwise, wouldn't we really have to die here today? Afterward, they can make up whatever they want. In the face of the unexpected change in front of them, although the higher-ups of the various races of the Federation from the second universe were furious, they did not panic. Following the sound of mockery and ridicule, a tall, white-bearded old man in a silver robe and a middle-aged strong man with green hair and a beard under his cheeks stepped forward with a sneer and walked to the front of the crowd. These 2 experts were the core high-level members of the Yingji clan and the Wood Spirit clan. They both had the terrifying cultivation of the 15th realm, the universe realm. Like Xianxia, they were supreme experts of the universe realm. Existences of this level could not be completely wiped out by the sect-protecting formation of the 6th palace of the 10 celestial palaces. Even if they were severely injured, they could still escape with injuries. With the 2 of them present, it was clearly unrealistic for Xianxia to think of killing them to silence them. He might have done so out of impulse. Now that he was reminded by these words, he probably regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. This was clearly a bad move, and it was extremely bad. Sure enough, after a short silence, in the depths of the 6th palace's sect-protecting formation in the distance, the gloomy-faced Xianxia quickly appeared and stepped out. Behind him were 9 people, who were the high-level members of the other 9 palaces. Their faces were even uglier than Xianxia's. Those who did not know better would think that they had just eaten a dead baby. They were full of bad luck and resentment. Fellow friends, you have misunderstood. You are all guests from afar. How can the 6th palace be negligent? As for the matter of silencing them, it is even more nonsense. It is purely a misunderstanding. After cupping his hands, Xianxia forced out a smile that was even uglier than crying. After saying that, he suddenly changed the topic, and a cold light burst out from his eyes as he glared at Yixian, who was standing in front of the various experts. The reason why I activated the sect-protecting formation was because I was worried that this thief would escape. This person harbored evil intentions, and kept saying that he was looking up to my beloved daughter, saying that he was willing to marry into the 6th palace. Who would have thought that he would turn his back on me in public today, and even said some things that were not true, clearly wanting to disrupt the harmony between the various races of the Federation. His heart is to be killed, and he must be taken down today. Chapter 3199. Just destroy the formation and blow it up. Xianxia, no matter how wrong Longxian is, he is still a direct descendant of my eternal dynasty. How can we allow you to bully the weak and capture him as you please? Without waiting for Xianxia's explosive shout to finish, the face of the elder Long Ziwen, who represented the immortal dynasty, had already sunk as he retorted in a stern voice. Although he had a personal grudge with Yixian, he still had to protect the face of the royal family of the eternal dynasty under such circumstances, even if it was just for show. What are you saying, fellow Taoist Ziwen? Longxian harbored evil intentions, framed me, and wanted to bring chaos to the 6th palace. How can I not do anything about it? At worst, we won't hurt him. We'll just hand him over to the Federation's Overwatch Council for a public trial. Besides that, this exalted one is an almighty figure of the universe. How can I personally deal with such a junior? Xianxia seemed to have seen through Long Ziwen's perfunctory intentions and smiled faintly. He pointed to a blue-robed young man behind him and said, "This battle will be fought by Gudarozi. He is also a new junior and his cultivation is also at the Black Hole realm. This shouldn't be a problem, right?" This? Long Ziwen frowned and seemed to be lost in thought. However, Yixian could tell at a glance that this was obviously a pretense. It was obvious that he was going with the flow and didn't want to interfere in this matter anymore. He immediately snorted coldly but did not point it out. Instead, he curled his lips and revealed a look of disdain. Anyone could see what he meant. Long Ziwen's old face was slightly hot, but he pretended not to see it. Seeing that he didn't say anything else, the upper echelons of the various clans from the second universe secretly sneered. They walked out from the crowd and stood in front of the 2 supreme beings of the universe. The silver-robed old man from the Yingji clan snorted lightly. He ignored Xianxia and turned to look at Yi Xian. Child of the Long family, since your temper is to my liking, if you can tell me everything that happened in the Death Star vortex in detail and provide me with some clues, I will guarantee your safety. Even if there is a dispute, I can guarantee that I will hand you over to the Federation's Overwatch Council for investigation and public trial. I will never let you fall into the hands of evil people. I should thank you, Senior. However, I'm afraid that the 6th Palace of the 10 Absolutes won't be able to keep me here. You don't have to worry about it. After cupping his hands, Yi Xian still had a carefree expression and didn't care in the slightest. He actually directly refused the good intentions of this great figure from the Inji clan. When he saw the great figure frown when he heard this, he immediately continued. As for everything within the Death Stellar Vortex, I've indeed seen and heard it, so I'll naturally speak frankly. The truth cannot be hidden forever. All the battleships that hid in the Death Vortex of stars, including the powerful warriors in the universe, have indeed died. Only I and Xianxia's devouring clone are left. The Death Stellar Vortex of stars nurtured a large crystal egg. Its entire body was the devouring origin crystal. After we entered, perhaps because Xianxia's primordial spirit had already entered the egg, the giant egg immediately exploded. A crystal body appeared, opened its eyes, and used its devouring ability to tear apart all the battleships on the spot. All the experts who fell out of the battleships were sucked dry. And the reason why I was left behind, as you can see, was because Xianxia had prepared an overt scheme to resolve the crisis. After all, in order to nurture his devouring clone, the entire vast star region had turned into a land of death. It was truly a great disturbance. He was afraid that this matter would blow up, so I escaped with my life. I was captured by the devouring clone, stepped into the one-way transmission formation, and returned to the 6th Palace. Oh, that's right, he still has a backup plan. The appearance of the devouring doppelganger, this old guy actually changed it to look like this junior. Obviously, he is preparing to blame this junior when this matter is exposed. This is something that I have to explain in advance. There were lies in these words. As long as Yi Xian's devouring clone was not captured, no one would know the truth. But it was clear that everyone was inclined to believe Yi Xian's words. Even the higher-ups of the other 9 palaces behind Xianxia frowned and looked displeased. They were obviously blaming Xianxia for hiding something from them. The devouring clone was clearly in his hands, but he said that Long Xian had taken it away. I see. What a big deal. He paid the price of the destruction of an entire star region just to nurture a clone of yours. Xianxia, aren't you afraid of angering the public? There have been rumors in the outside world that Xianxia's status in the 6th Palace is very high, far higher than his status in the Shao Palace. It is suspected that this is a clone of Xianxia, and it seems that it has been confirmed. The primordial spirit in this clone was prepared by him for the devouring clone. That's right. No wonder Xianxia did not hesitate to self-destruct that day. It turns out that the body was already something that could be given up. Later on, the primordial spirit did indeed rush into the Death Star vortex. Even the child of the Long family could come to the 6th Palace through the teleportation formation. How could Xianxia not know? Why did he not appear today? With the means of Xianxia, what is it to reconstruct a body for the Shao Palace? It is obvious that the primordial spirit has already entered the devouring clone. Quickly hand it over. As these words came out from the higher-ups of the various races in the Federation of the Second Universe, Yi Xian's words were completely confirmed. It was reasonable and reasonable. Even if Xianxia had 100 mouths, he would not be able to defend himself. Little brat, you are slandering me. What are you waiting for? If you don't do something, I will kill you on the spot. You are killing me. Yi Xian's trick really angered Xianxia. Even the higher-ups of the 9 palaces next to him were suspicious. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood on the spot. He immediately roared. The last roar was obviously directed at the blue-robed young man. The latter's body trembled, and without hesitation, he raised his hand and rushed out, heading straight for Yi Xian. Whoosh! The power of the perfect level 9 black hole surged out of the blue-robed young man's body like a giant waterfall. It instantly turned into a giant hand that was about 100 feet long. It covered the sky and the earth and slammed down on Yi Xian. Rumble! At the same time, the sound of thunder came again from the top of the giant mountain. The great protective array of the 6th Palace of the 10 Ultimates actually responded at this moment, and released an invisible pressure that pressed down on Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, the higher-ups of the various races in the Federation of the 10 Ultimates immediately cried out softly. How can a mere Black Hole Realm Junior of the 6 Palaces have such means? He can actually summon the Great Protective Array to assist him? Only the Deputy Palace Master can have such authority. Too shameless, Tian Chenzi. Do you dare say that this blue-robed young man is not another one of your clones? How can a perfect level 9 black hole use such a method against a level 1 black hole? How shameless! Hearing this, Yi Xian suddenly understood. No wonder Tian Chenzi dared to send a black hole realm cultivator to deal with him. How could he not know that he had killed an origin realm cultivator before? After all this time, he was waiting here. Chapter 3200. One arrow collapses the heavens, break the formation? Just blow it up with one arrow? Hearing these words, the surrounding experts were all stunned, their expressions becoming strange. The broken formation Yi Xian was talking about was the ancestral land Great Protective Formation of the 6th Absolute Palace. It was probably not much weaker than the Star Defensive Formation of the Immortal Royal Capital's Immortal Star. Yet, here he was saying that he could break it with one arrow? This was absolutely impossible. No one took it seriously. Some of the experts had already curled their lips when they came to their senses. Some of them even sneered sarcastically. At the same time, the front end of Yi Xian's raised left arm suddenly blazed with brilliance. A giant golden bow in the form of energy appeared without warning. Yi Xian held the bow in his hand. The shape of the giant bow was simple and ferocious. The bow's body was clearly the body of 2 humanoid creatures. Yi Xian held their connected feet in his hand. What connected the energy bowstrings were the 2 humanoid spirits' gaping mouths. Wang. Following the appearance of the giant golden bow, a golden light flashed in the middle of the bowstring. A dazzling golden energy arrow quickly condensed. As the arrow was drawn and released, an extremely sharp and invisible intent instantly burst out, causing one's scalp to go numb and giving birth to an inexplicably strong sense of oppression. The arrow was still on the bowstring, but it already showed an unstoppable momentum. This is a divine ability? What a sharp arrow intent. It seems to be able to cut through everything. It has a terrifying pressure that can reach the heavens. What kind of divine ability is this? This energy arrow seems to contain an incomparably majestic force. It has the aura of cultivation, the power of blood and qi, and even a faint vitality. Heavens, is Long Xian crazy? Although the power of this divine ability is impressive, the price is too high. After shooting this arrow, will he still be able to stand steadily? All around, many experts spoke out in surprise. Some cried out in alarm, while others whispered. When Yi Xian heard this, his mind was not shaken in the slightest. This arrow had indeed absorbed a large amount of cultivation energy from his body, and even a little bit of his life force had been injected into it. However, the current Yi Xian was far from what he used to be. In a short period of time, after experiencing 2 large increases in cultivation, his foundation was already extremely strong. Although he was still unable to display the strongest power of the divine ability of the heaven-falling bow, he could completely control the amount of energy he consumed when shooting the arrow. He did not use his full strength for this arrow. He poured about 80% of his cultivation power, the same amount of spiritual power, and a little bit of his physical qi, and even weaker vitality. The arrow shot seemed to have a miraculous effect, as if it was a part of flesh and blood, as if it was an arm, as if it was a finger's finger. Swish! As Yi Xian released the 3 fingers on his right hand, the energy arrow that was already fully drawn instantly whistled through the air, causing an incomparably sharp sound of breaking through the air. As if it had teleported, it directly arrived in the sky above and pierced into the palm of the giant palm of cultivation. Boom! Without any suspense, the huge hand of cultivation suddenly exploded. The blue-robed young man suspected to be Tian Chenzi's clone opened his mouth and vomited a mouthful of blood. His face immediately became as pale as paper, tottering on the verge of collapse. Under the backlash, he had been heavily injured, losing all of his battle prowess. But this was far from over. As the blue-robed young man's giant palm exploded, the golden energy arrow that pierced through the palm streaked through the air like the fastest meteor. Its sharpness did not diminish in the slightest, and it instantly plunged into the surging thunderclouds even higher up in the sky. Immediately after, A series of even more violent explosions rang out, resounding endlessly, and the entire giant peak seemed to shake a few times. The layer of rolling thunderclouds in the sky that was condensed from the supreme array power of the sect protecting great formation of the sixth palace of 10 absolutes was completely penetrated, and a hole with a diameter of about 10,000 feet appeared, as if a gap had collapsed in the sky. A single arrow had collapsed the sky. The scene shocked everyone. Even Xianxia, the silver-robed old man from the Federation of the Second Universe, and the green-haired man, opened their mouths reflexively and slightly raised their heads to look at the sky. Shock was written all over their faces. When this arrow was shot out, they could clearly feel the change in Xianxia's cultivation. The originally abundant cultivation energy instantly disappeared by 80 to 90%, but even so, he was only in existence that had just entered the 8th level of the Starry Sky realm, and was only at the 1st level of the Black Hole realm. Even if his physical strength and cultivation were to be completely exhausted, it would still be impossible for him to possess such terrifying power. Even a supreme almighty of the universe realm would need to use his full strength to break the sect-protecting array of the 6th absolute palace. What a weird technique! Not only is it able to instantly condense and compress one's cultivation base into an arrow for a killing blow, but it also has an invisible amplification effect, greatly increasing the power of the arrow. This is a desperate attack that far surpasses one's cultivation base, and it already has the qualifications to be a trump card. That's right. It's indeed shocking. The attack of a black hole state cultivator has an effect close to that of a universe state cultivator. Its power is at least hundreds of times stronger. It's too shocking. The silver-robed old man and the green-haired man exclaimed in shock. There was even envy in their eyes. The power of the arrow was truly amazing. If they could master it, not only would they be invincible in the same level, but they would also be able to kill the 16th level experts of the star state, who had surpassed the universe state. As expected of the best of the younger generation of the dynasty, you do have some skills. Unfortunately, although this technique is amazing and terrifying, it's like a broken boat. Once the arrow is shot, you won't be able to continue the battle. In the distance, Xianxia was still in the thick fog of the protective formation at the edge of the mountain peak. His figure was faintly visible, and there was also a hint of greed in his eyes. He seemed to have made a decision as he spoke. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly attacked. How dare you destroy my protective formation? I won't let you go today. I must suppress you. Boom! Thunder rumbled, but Xianxia didn't move. He only slightly raised his hand and formed a seal in the air, causing a 3,000-meter-long claw to appear out of thin air. It enveloped Yixian's body like a cage and quickly closed. He clearly wanted to take advantage of the fact that the silver-robed old man and the green-haired man were unprepared to capture Yixian at lightning speed. Aside from the great hatred in his heart, the main reason was probably because he had his eyes on Yixian's heaven-falling bow divine ability. He wanted to interrogate the silver-robed old man and the green-haired man before they could make a decision. Don't you think your table manners are too ugly? In order to get this prince's fallen sky bow, you don't even care about the face of the universe state. Yixian sneered. He was not afraid at all. As he spoke, his eyes turned cold and his voice became sharp. Since even the universe state doesn't care about face, what else do I have to worry about? You only have yourself to blame for everything. Don't blame me later. The great calamity of the 6th palace of the 10 ultimates today is all because of you. As soon as he said this, there were exclamations all around. What was going on? Did he have more powerful means? Chapter 3201. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin with a purple bamboo forest, 100 meters underground. Just as Yixian took out the fallen sky bow and shocked everyone with his arrow, the devouring avatar, who had been hiding under the bamboo forest, also took action at the same time. His figure quickly descended, approaching the immortal purple spirit root that was 1,000 meters below. This action was also very important. Once he successfully obtained the immortal purple spirit root and quickly refined it, Yixian's system title exploration mission would be completed instantly. At that time, even if his original body was in trouble in the peak central territory, he could activate the universe coordinate jump ability at any time. Just this alone would make him invincible. The distance of 1,000 meters was passed in the blink of an eye. The devouring avatar, who was diving quickly, suddenly stopped. About 10 meters to the right, a purple root that was half a palm long and 2 fingers thick came into sight. To be named after the immortal, This thing was obviously extraordinary. The purple gold brilliance was restrained, and the surface of the spirit root was covered with mottled lines, exuding a thick and ancient aura. After a slight hesitation, the devouring avatar suddenly made a move. The devouring talent was fully activated, and an invisible force wrapped around the immortal purple spirit root and pulled it closer in an instant. Rumble! Almost at the same time, deep in the ground under his feet, a dull roar suddenly came, and the surrounding soil and rocks gently shook. It felt as if there was a terrifying giant beast that had been sleeping for thousands of years under the ground, and at this moment, it was suddenly disturbed. The giant beast turned over, and the earth was turned upside down. What was even worse was that with this huge roar coming from the depths below, the immortal purple spiritual root that was wrapped by the avatar with an invisible devouring force and was about to be absorbed into the avatar's body to start refining suddenly became incomparably heavy at this moment. It seemed to be connected with the entire giant peak, and it was difficult to move for a while. It couldn't be absorbed into the body. The expression of the avatar suddenly changed, and his heart sank. He gritted his teeth and was about to make a move again, using all his strength to forcibly absorb the immortal purple spirit root. From between his eyebrows, a small exquisite tower of about 3 inches suddenly appeared, protruding out like a vertical eye, embedded in the middle of the avatar's eyebrows. It was the Tower of Desolation that was moved into the avatar's body by the headless baby corpse. For some reason, at this moment, it appeared on its own initiative and began to show its power. Hua! The sound of a waterfall suddenly rang out, and a grey chaotic fog poured out from the Tower of Desolation. Like a mini river, it quickly flowed and fell on the immortal purple spiritual root in front of the devouring treasured body. Without waiting for the devouring treasure body to come back to its senses, the grey chaotic fog had already wrapped around the immortal purple spiritual root. In an instant, it retreated into the Tower of Desolation and disappeared in the blink of an eye. After that, the small pagoda disappeared from the space between the clone's eyebrows and went back into his body. Screech! Rumble! At the same time, in the depths of the ground below, there was another roar. It was far louder than before, and there was even a sharp cry like a phoenix. The surrounding soil and rocks shook even more violently. The giant beast did not just turn over, but seemed to want to break out of the ground and rush up. What was even worse was that with the sound of the phoenix's screech, the surrounding soil and rocks were also affected by some kind of force, becoming extremely tight. In an instant, it gave the avatar a feeling of being trapped in a sticky swamp, and it was unable to quickly escape. In addition, there were countless thick and thin purple roots spreading out from all directions. They should be the roots of the countless purple bamboos in the purple bamboo forest on the ground above. They were not visible before, but now they suddenly appeared together as if they had a life of their own. They intertwined together to form a large net, surrounding him from all directions. This was clearly the rhythm of not being able to escape even if he had wings. The complexion of the avatar changed again. He hesitated for less than half a second, but then he clenched his teeth and made a decision. He activated his devouring innate skill again, and an invisible devouring force burst out of his body. This time, there was no specific target. In the blink of an eye, a vortex black hole with a diameter of 10 feet appeared around his body, enveloping the avatar. His body disappeared as he hid in the vortex black hole. The next moment, some of the soil and rocks closest to the vortex black hole quietly loosened, and the mysterious force on them was swallowed up, so they were no longer like a sticky swamp that bound creatures. Whistling from the upper right, the first dozens of purple bamboo roots that approached from the upper right also suddenly stopped at this moment without any suspense. The originally extremely rich purple in the roots quickly dimmed, and the energy was swallowed up, invisibly sinking into the vortex black hole formed by the devouring talent. They withered in an instant. Moreover, this strange momentum of defeat was still rapidly spreading outwards, and the range of its influence was gradually increasing. Screech! Screech! Rumble! In the depths of the ground below, the angry roar like the cry of a phoenix came again, 2 times in a row. All the soil and rocks were no longer just shaking, but began to undulate like waves in the sea. There were waves and there were waves. There was no doubt that the entire giant peak was affected, and it shook easily. If the underground was so turbulent, the ground above must have already been shaking. With such a big movement, this was definitely not a giant beast turning over. The endless huge shadow in the depths of the ground should be struggling with all its might, and it was about to completely recover. At that time, it would break out of the ground, and its real body would soar into the sky and descend. The avatar, who hid in the vortex black hole, seemed to feel the danger. Although its figure did not appear, it urged the vortex black hole formed by the devouring talent. While it was swallowing the energy in the soil, rocks, and purple bamboo roots, it slowly but continuously floated up. The aura from below was getting stronger and stronger, and it was too terrifying. It could not stay here any longer. On the ground, in the central area of the peak, just as the immortal purple spiritual root was successfully absorbed by the chaotic gray fog from the Tower of Antiquity and refined in an instant, Xianxia heard the familiar sound of a system notification in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the immortal purple spiritual root. Grade: Starry Sky Treasure. Quality: Innate Spiritual Root. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully refining the immortal purple spiritual root. System Title Exploration Task completed. Current title: Interstellar Trailblazer. Interstellar Trailblazer. This title has a halo effect. On the basis of the original title of the first 3 levels, it adds a primary plane coordinate jump ability. Primary plane coordinate jump. The system ability to perform a coordinate jump between different universe planes, ignoring the barriers of the universe planes, and directly jump to the destination. The primary level is limited to the adjacent universe planes connected by the universe wormholes. Ding! The system explanation is complete. Do you want to perform the coordinate jump immediately? Did I succeed? Xianxia was instantly energized. In such a short time, not only did he obtain a section of the innate spiritual root, which was a starry sky treasure, but he also obtained the coordinate jump ability to cross the universe planes. Chapter 3202. Seal Demon Subduing Leader. What happened? There seems to be movement underground, and it doesn't seem to be small. Damn it! It's actually the purple bamboo forest? Stinking brat, what did you do? This sovereign has an extremely bad feeling, as if something big is about to happen. Following the sound of the system beep in Xianxia's mind, the first rumbling sound came from the depths of the ground. The surrounding experts even felt the ground beneath their feet slightly shake. After being stunned for a moment, they couldn't help but cry out in alarm. As for the palace master of the 6th palace, Xianxia, his expression suddenly changed. In the blink of an eye, his eyes were about to split open as he stared at Xianxia and roared. At the same time, the 3,000-meter-long claw print condensed to the extreme, turning into a claw-shaped cage, trapping Xianxia in a space of about 10 feet, and quickly shot towards Xianxia. You're quite fast. Xianxia, do you think this sovereign is blind? Either we keep him here, or we fight. Within one breath, it's up to you. Swish! Swish! Seeing that Xianxia had already been captured and was currently flying towards Xianxia from within the claw imprint cage, the silver-robed elder and the green-haired man seemed to have finally made their decision. At the same time, they let out a fierce shout, and a boundless and mighty force surged out from their bodies, causing the surrounding space to vibrate and resonate, causing a muffled thunderous sound to ring out. This was clearly the rhythm of a battle that could happen at any time. If Xianxia did not remove the claw print cage within one breath, these 2 supreme experts from the Federation of the Second Universe would not hesitate to attack with all their might. Once a battle of this level began, it would be very difficult to end it. At this moment, like Xianxia, the other upper echelons of the 9 palaces who were hidden in the fog of the sect-protecting formation had a hint of hesitation on their faces. Unfortunately, in the end, they still chose to remain silent. This kind of silence represented their support. They were also tempted by Xianxia's heaven-falling bow ability. 10 extreme heavenly palaces. Do you want to start a war with the imperial dynasty? How can you take away the direct bloodline of my dynasty as you please? Stop immediately and leave old 18 behind. Otherwise we will fight. We are all humans. Once the 2 strongest factions turn against each other, the consequences will be severe. You have to consider it carefully. At this moment, the imperial court's elder, Long Ziwen, who had already given up on supporting Xianxia, suddenly changed his mind. His cultivation surged as he sternly reprimanded. This matter was started by all of you. The imperial court will not be responsible for any consequences. How interesting. In the blink of an eye, this prince has become a hot commodity that everyone is fighting over? What a bunch of shameless bastards. Within the claw print cage, Xianxia stood proudly with his hands behind his back, and he muttered softly as if he was muttering to himself. A wisp of disdain and ridicule appeared on his face, and he actually sighed in the end. Alas, what a pity. All of you are bound to be disappointed. This prince seems to not have reached the point where I can be bullied by others. Lightning Emperor Seal. Rise. Yi Xian suddenly shouted the last sentence. Then, as if in response, a thunderous roar suddenly erupted from within his body. Boom. Accompanied by the roar of thunder, an azure gold light whizzed out from between his eyebrows and expanded in the wind. In the blink of an eye, it had already turned into an ancient fist-sized seal that hung about a foot above Yi Xian's head. Endless azure gold light burst out from the seal and condensed behind Yi Xian. The light burst out, and it actually evolved into a strange scene that illuminated half of the sky. The aura of this scene was simple and unadorned, and it revealed a dense and desolate aura. It was like a distant expanse of the starry sky. Hazy green mist and golden radiance suffused the sky, and at the deepest depths of it, an enormous golden lotus was blooming extremely brilliantly. It emanated boundless golden light, and it seemed as if it was nurtured by the heavens and the earth and was born from space. It was extremely enormous, and even the stars seemed extremely weak and tiny before it. On the lotus stem of the golden lotus, there was clearly a lotus seed. It was a mysterious azure green color, and its shape was actually like a seal. Its entire body was entwined with golden lightning, extending and retracting endlessly. It was exactly the same as the thing hanging above Yi Xian's head. Seeing this strange scene, the divine souls of the surrounding experts shook violently, and the sound of cold air rose and fell one after another. No matter how imaginative he was, he would never have imagined that Yi Xian actually held such an extraordinary lightning emperor seal in his hands. It seemed to have been nurtured from a giant golden lotus with an aura that almost covered the sky. Was this the rhythm of defying the heavens? It was absolutely a natural object, absolutely a starry sky treasure. Rumble. Boom! The strange phenomenon behind Yi Xian was still, but there was always the rumbling of thunder, shocking everyone's minds. Amidst the rumbling thunder, countless tiny golden lightning bolts gradually surrounded the lotus-like golden lightning seal on the lotus canopy, expanding and expanding without end. Around the entire golden lotus, countless green lightning bolts continued to explode, becoming denser and denser. In the end, they turned into countless gigantic golden lightning bolts that destroyed countless stars, and in the end, all of them surged into the golden lightning seal on the lotus stem. Swish! Rumble! At this moment, a weak and sharp sound of something tearing through the air suddenly rang out, accompanied by the sound of endless thunder exploding, giving off the feeling of surging thunder in the heavens. Immediately after, the entire strange phenomenon exploded with a brilliant light and instantly collapsed, transforming into a blazing golden light that rapidly spread out like a tide. The degree of heat was so intense that even the supreme experts of the universe realm, such as Xianxia, the silver-robed elder, and the green-haired man, couldn't look straight at it. They subconsciously narrowed their eyes and turned their heads to the side. When they turned their heads again, the golden light formed by the explosion of the strange phenomenon behind Yi Xian had completely spread out. Like melting snow under the scorching sun, it silently and without any suspense, directly destroyed the claw-print cage that imprisoned Yi Xian, merged into the void, and disappeared. The claw-print cage dissipated, as if there was a backlash. Xianxia's figure clearly swayed twice, and his expression was extremely ugly. His face was ashen, and even the corner of his mouth had a faint trace of blood. A sharp light shot out from his eyes. At this moment, Xianxia clearly had the intention to kill. You should be proud of yourself for being able to break free from the divine ability of a supreme being of the universe. Unfortunately, although the power of this lightning stamp is passable, it is still lacking if you want to shake me. It's a little disappointing, but it's only a so-so. Poochie. You old thing, do you think that's the end of it? Just now, I was just trying to create an atmosphere to show my solemnity. The main character is still hanging above this prince's head, so it's obvious that he hasn't activated it yet, okay? But there's one thing you're right about. A dignified supreme expert of the universe being injured just by creating an atmosphere. It's truly disappointing. Shaking his head and sighing, Yi Xian rolled his eyes, then raised his hand and pointed at Xianxia, who was so angry that he was about to vomit blood, and suddenly shouted, "Golden lightning repels evil, green lightning slays demon leader. My seal shall suppress this fiend. Quickly kill him." Swish. Chapter 3203. Translator. Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nioi Studio Ferocious. Back then, when Yi Xian's cultivation was only at the fourth realm, the planet realm, he had already used a Thunder Origin Pearl to successfully kill a Heavenly Legacy clan upper echelon who was at the ninth realm, the Origin realm. Now, he was a powerful existence at the 8th stage of the Black Hole realm. His control over the Thunder Emperor treasure seal had improved greatly and was far from what it used to be. Because of this, when he used the Rai D seal this time, the strange phenomenon of the Thunder Emperor treasure seal appeared behind him. Even Yi Xian was surprised by this, but it just so happened to help him dissolve the claw imprint cage. It could be considered a small surprise. Otherwise, if he wanted to escape from the claw imprint cage, he would have to spend some effort and methods. At this moment, as Yi Xian suddenly made his move after escaping, a weak ray of light instantly shot out from the azure gold Thunder Emperor seal that was spinning endlessly above his head. Its speed was so fast that even the supreme expert of the universe, Xianxia, was unable to react in time. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of him. This faint light was a Thunder Origin Pearl. Previously, in the Starry Sky Thunder Tomb in the first universe, Yi Xian had condensed a total of 10 Thunder Origin Pearls. He had used one to kill the high-level Tianji clan member Shan Bo, and this was the second one. There were only 8 left in the Thunder Emperor treasure seal. Although the Thunder Origin Pearl looked unremarkable and was only the size of a thumb, in fact, every Thunder Origin Pearl was formed from countless blue Thunder Origin Pearls that were compressed by the power of the Rai D seal to the extreme. Its power was extremely terrifying. When it had just been condensed, it had been able to instantly kill an Origin Realm upper echelon member of the Heaven's Legacy race. Now, it had been nurtured in the Rai D seal for such a long time. In addition, Yi Xian's cultivation had skyrocketed to the Black Hole realm. After he used the treasure seal, the power of the treasure seal was far greater than before. This part of the treasure seal's power was imperceptibly applied to the Thunder Origin Pearl, causing its power to increase again. With a combination of the two, the power of the second Thunder Origin Pearl that Yi Xian had blasted out was far more powerful than the first one. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. Rumble! Gotcha? At this moment, as the Thunder Source bead blasted out, the void along the way was torn apart, leaving behind a thin black line. Endless thunder and lightning descended, densely packed, causing people to feel numb all over. The vast Hu Central Territory was instantly enveloped by a formless thunderous emperor's might. It was so terrifying that even the pressure of the 6th palace of the 10 ultimates was weakened or even completely covered. All the experts in the surroundings were shocked at this moment. Their hair stood on end, and the hairs on their backs stood on end. This is impossible. As the target of the Thunder Origin bead, Xianxia felt it the most intensely. He felt as if he was being stared at by a ferocious beast. It enveloped his body and mind, causing him to break out in cold sweat. He cried out in shock. It had been a long time since he had this feeling. The young man in front of him, who was only at rank 1 Black Hole realm, was originally like an ant in his eyes. However, the young man had repeatedly taken out powerful treasures. Now, the young man had actually made him feel a sense of crisis that threatened his life. Shame. Anger. This was simply a disgrace to him. A Black Hole realm ant was actually clamoring to suppress a universe master. Moreover, it really made his hair stand on end. No matter what, he couldn't accept this. He was about to go crazy. If I don't kill you today, I swear I'm not human anymore. Ah! The shame and anger that he had never felt made Xianxia completely furious. After roaring furiously, he looked up to the sky and howled crazily. However, he quickly retreated. Although the green gold light, which was full of terrifying thunderous emperor's might, could not kill him on the spot, if he took it head-on, he would lose a layer of skin even if he did not die. It was reasonable for him to be lightly injured, but it was also possible for him to be severely injured. How could a mighty figure of the universe be injured by a Black Hole realm ant? Although it was also humiliating to avoid the attack, at least it was better than bleeding in public. That would be the real end of his life, and he would be left with an eternal mark of shame. At this moment, Xianxia had already made up his mind to kill. While retreating quickly, he planned in his heart that after this attack, he would immediately counterattack with all his strength. He did not even want to use the magical bow and arrow, he only wanted to kill his enemy and avenge his humiliation. Boom! Just as his shoulders shook and his body was about to move, the green gold light, which had already shot close to him, suddenly exploded without warning. The terrifying explosion shook the entire giant mountain, and it shook violently. The rolling mist formed by the power of the great protective array in the sky was instantly dispersed and completely collapsed. Some of the weaker powerhouses directly vomited blood, and their faces were as pale as paper. They were on the verge of collapsing. Some of them were the disciples of the sixth palace who had retreated earlier, and some of the followers who had gathered behind the silver-robed old man and the green-haired man. Xianxia, who was closest to the source of this terrifying explosion, was even more shocked, and his qi and blood were a little unstable. Everything was too sudden, and he was caught off guard. Who would have thought that this inconspicuous and weak light would explode before it even touched his body? It was too sinister. Hua! At the same time as the explosion, the originally weak green-gold light, after exploding, instantly poured out a large amount of thunder and lightning, as if a river of thunder and lightning had suddenly appeared in the sky. The amount was so large that it had turned into a tide, and it spread out with a loud bang, drowning the roaring Xianxia in the first moment. The entire lightning river covered a radius of several miles. In addition to Xianxia, the other 9 heavenly palace higher-ups from the other 9 palaces were also affected. Although they were at the edge of the lightning river, they were caught off guard and were also drowned. Ah! Boom! Gotcha! Damn it! What the hell is this thing? Everything happened too suddenly. Retreat quickly. The green-gold lightning river churned endlessly as countless bolts of azure lightning exploded. The dense golden lightning weaved into a fine net that enveloped the area. Amidst the endless thunder and lightning, the upper echelons of the 9 palaces all cried out in alarm and anger. Xianxia's voice also rang out, but there were no more substantive words. It was as if he was venting his anger, and this was clearly the rhythm of him being angered to the point of madness. In the distance, the hundreds of experts from the various great powers who had gathered together were completely stunned. The situation was too strange. Prince Xian, who was only at the Black Hole Realm, had actually taken care of all the upper echelons of the 10 great heavenly palaces by himself. Among the 10 of them, Xianxia and the palace master of the other palace were all supreme beings of the 15th great realm, while the other 8 were all supreme beings of the vice palace master level. Their cultivations were all at the 14th great realm, the cosmic light realm. They were caught off guard and were actually wiped out. Too sullen. It was simply savage. As these thoughts flashed through their minds, the gazes of the experts towards Yi Xian changed again. This time, even the silver-robed old man and the green-haired man seemed to have some fear in their eyes. Chapter 3204. Undead Dark Phoenix. The great thunderbolt river appeared abruptly. It came quickly and left even faster. Amidst the endless thunder and lightning, everything was completely annihilated in less than 3 breaths. The area within a radius of a few miles regained its tranquility. Only the cracks in the void that looked like black lines silently showed the terrifying catastrophe that had happened here a few moments ago. The void was blasted apart, and the earth was charred black. In addition, 10 battered and exhausted figures appeared. The 10 higher-ups of the Celestial Palace were all existences above the cosmic light realm, and 2 of them were universe masters. Obviously, it was impossible for them to be killed so easily, even if they were caught off guard. The 9 people who were at the edge of the Great Thunderbolt River did not even suffer too serious a blow. The extent of the impact was limited. At most, it was slightly more serious than a superficial wound. As for Xianxia, who happened to be at the center of the Great Thunderbolt River territory and was immediately submerged by the endless waves of thunder and lightning, he only had blood at the corner of his mouth and his injuries were slightly more serious. He did not even lose his combat strength. The supreme pressure of a universe master was even more fierce. This was the result of anger. However, even though the 10 of them were unharmed, their current appearances were truly unbearable to look at. They were in too sorry a state. Their clothes were tattered, and their heads and faces were charred black. Xianxia, who was located in the Thunder Great River Center region and had been caught head-on, had all of his hair blown off. His bald head was just like his face, completely black. Only his pair of eyes that were glaring furiously were as red as blood. At a sudden glance, he looked like a braised egg that had come to life. There was even white smoke coming out of his mouth and nose from time to time. It was obvious that this guy had been struck by lightning. A dignified universe master, the palace master of the 6th palace of the 10 absolutes, had been tormented into such a miserable state today. This was more hateful than killing him. At this moment, Xianxia was about to explode with anger. The only thought in his mind was to kill. His eyes were like a ferocious beast that had just been released from its cage. Fierce light flashed, and it was about to choose a person to devour. As expected of a universe almighty, Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh as he shook his head and sighed. Sigh, his head was blasted into a soy egg, but he's completely fine. He didn't even lose a single limb. He's really freaking resistant. Puh. Hearing this, Xianxia opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. It had nothing to do with his previous injuries. It was completely due to anger. What did he mean by really resistant to beatings? This brat's mouth was too despicable. What did a dignified almighty figure of the universe become in his mouth? Was it a human flesh machine that was specifically designed to be abused by others? Today, you will definitely die. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Xianxia gritted his teeth and was about to attack to vent his anger. This kind of thunder pearl is very difficult to condense. Every time you use one, there will be one less. I don't believe that you have the ability to condense a large amount of thunder pearls. Do you dare to use another one? He was indeed a universe almighty. A terrifying existence who could remain unscathed even after his head was blasted into a soy egg. After being struck once, he actually knew the ins and outs of the thunder pearl. From his words, it was obvious that he was certain that Yi Xian didn't have any more thunder pearls. He was no longer afraid. I'm sorry to disappoint you again this time. Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh. With a thought, he activated the Rai-D seal that was suspended above his head again. With a whoosh, another ray of greenish-gold light shot out. I don't have many thunder pearls with me. I only have about 70 or 80 thunder pearls. Less than 100. It's a little too little, but it's barely enough to plow your 6th palace's ancestral land. What? He really has more? This kid is going to defy the heavens. Such terrifying thunder pearls. If he really has more than 100 of them, who would dare to provoke him? If he keeps blasting them one after another, I'm afraid even a universe almighty would be exhausted to death by him in the end. Rumble. Seeing another ray of greenish-gold light shoot out, Xianxia, who was on the opposite side, was stunned. The expressions of the 9 people behind him changed slightly. They frowned and quickly retreated without hesitation, as if they were avoiding the god of plague. On the side of the experts from various races from the second universe, there was a large number of gasps and exclamations. At this time, the ground under the feet of the experts suddenly shook again. This time, it was even more intense than before. The entire mountain peak was shaken, and a terrifying roar came clearly from the depths of the earth. It was accompanied by a fierce roar that sounded like the cry of a phoenix. It was as if an ancient fierce beast had been awakened from its slumber deep underground and was about to break out of the ground. Hearing this angry cry of a phoenix, the expressions of the 9 celestial palace higher-ups, who had just retreated, changed drastically. It was as if they had a premonition that something bad was about to happen. They exclaimed in horror. This is a phoenix cry? Not good, the dark phoenix has been awakened. Xianxia, what the hell did you do? The 6th palace is finished. The inheritance is no longer safe. There must be a problem with the immortal purple spirit root. Otherwise, why would the dark phoenix wake up early? Something big is going to happen. Xianxia, hurry up and take this kid down. The saint beast of the 6th palace has gone berserk. We need to work together to pacify it. Rumble. Kacha. Hua. Without waiting for the 9 people to finish speaking, the second thunder origin bead had already exploded. Without any suspense, a river of thunder suddenly surged out and covered Xianxia, who was still in a daze, completely drowning him. At the same time, the shaking of the entire mountain peak became even more serious. Rocks rolled down one after another, and accompanied by the sound of explosions, a terrifying crack rapidly extended from the distance. Such a towering mountain peak was actually torn apart by a terrifying force from the depths of the earth. This was the rhythm of splitting one into 2. Swish! As the earth shook, a black light soared into the sky from the depths of the terrifying crack in the distance. It was clearly a vortex that was like a black hole. As soon as it came out, it disappeared into the air. The devouring avatar stepped out with a solemn expression, glanced at the chaos here, and without hesitation, turned around and fled into the distance. Screech! This time, it was incomparably clear and real. The sound seemed to have some sort of mystical power that actually pierced through gold and cracked stone. When it entered his ears, Even Yi Xian's soul couldn't help but tremble slightly. If it wasn't for the corpse lamp tattoo on his left chest suddenly burning and instantly dissolving, just this phoenix cry's ruthless howl would have caused his primordial spirit to be minimally injured. Along with this terrifying roar that shook the heavens, a black claw-like object suddenly stretched out from the terrifying fissure that was rapidly spreading in the distance. Every claw was over 100 feet thick, and it was incomparably terrifying. It was like the ghost claw of the Emperor of the Underworld that came from the Nine Hells. It stretched straight into the sky and slapped towards the devouring avatar that was fleeing into the distance. F***CK. A single claw is like a towering tree, dozens of feet thick. How terrifying is this beast's body? Even the legendary rock is only like this, right? It can cover 90,000 miles with a flap of its wings. Chapter 3205. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation both ran away in less than 3 breaths of time. The lightning river that appeared after the second thunder origin bead exploded disappeared, and Xianxia's figure was revealed. This time, his head seemed to be even darker, shining with a black light that shone brightly like a black watermelon. At first glance, this was clearly the sign of a braised egg that had successfully transcended the tribulation and was about to be born. The radiance was too dazzling. Unfortunately, although the braised egg's head had turned into a spirit, Xianxia was still the same. He was still unharmed, and his legend of resisting powerful existences had not been destroyed. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. It seemed that the Thunder Origin Pearl alone was not enough to shake the supreme Jianghu realm expert. Perhaps in the future, when Yi Xian's cultivation level increased and he could unleash the full power of the Rai-D seal, it would have such an effect. As for now, since the Thunder Origin Pearl was ineffective, the only method left was the headless infant corpse. This was Yi Xian's true trump card, and he did not want to reveal it too early. Coincidentally, the devouring doppelganger had escaped and escaped far away. Although there was a terrifying undead dark phoenix chasing after it, the latter's main body had yet to appear. No matter how long its claws could reach, there was a limit. It would not be able to catch up for a while. Besides, with the desolate ancient inheritance tower, Yi Xian was not worried about the safety of the devouring doppelganger. He had already dug a hole beforehand. Although the devouring doppelganger looked exactly the same as him, most of the experts on the mountain peak thought that it was Xianxia's doppelganger. There was no way to explain the yellow mud falling into one's pants. Yi Xian had already thought of retreating. It was time to escape. The commotion was too big, and the Thunder Origin Pearl could not truly deter the experts. In order to avoid any unforeseen circumstances, it was better to leave this place as soon as possible. As for the devouring doppelganger, it was better to leave it in the cultivation camp. He could use Xianxia's name to devour energy and cause chaos. After all, there was already someone to take the blame. When he thought of this, Yi Xian took advantage of the fact that Xianxia was in a state of shock and could not react for a moment. He turned his head and grinned. The almighty Chen really knows how to play. While my original body is up there enduring the lightning strikes, transcending the tribulation as if I'm taking a bath, my doppelganger isn't idling around either. He's down there playing with the big bird he's rearing. He's not afraid even if his nest is torn down. As expected of an almighty. Yi Xian waved his hand and said, "Bye-bye, bro. That blackbird looks fierce. I'm not as tough as you, so I won't get involved. You guys take your time." Before he could finish speaking, Yi Xian had already issued a command to the system without hesitation. He immediately activated the universal coordinate jump function and jumped to the target's death spiral. The next moment, a faint light flashed, and his figure disappeared completely. In the eyes of the surrounding experts, it was as if he had teleported away. Although this was a little unexpected, the suppressive effect of the Great Protective Array of the 6th Palace of 10 Ultimates was basically non-existent. The Great Protective Array had collapsed and lost its power. Even an existence of the Black Hole realm could teleport away. Therefore, Yi Xian left very calmly and was not afraid of revealing anything. "Puh! You want to run?" Xianxia spat out another mouthful of blood. His expression was extremely ferocious. Before Yi Xian left, he did not forget to put a black pot on his head. This was too infuriating. In addition, when the devouring doppelganger appeared, he completely understood that the immortal purple spirit root must have been stolen. Otherwise, why would the Dark Phoenix be so angry? That damned guy! I didn't pay attention for a moment, and he actually provoked such a huge disaster. The entire sixth palace was almost turned upside down, and even the undying Dark Phoenix was exposed. This was a huge crisis that could no longer be resolved. With a cold snort, Xianxia fully expanded his spirit sense and instantly covered a radius of 10,000 miles, searching for Yi Xian's figure. Even if an ant of the black hole realm could teleport, it would not be able to teleport 10,000 miles away. At most, it would be around 1,000 miles. Xianxia was very sure of this. Unfortunately, the result was extremely strange. Not only was there no trace of Yi Xian's original body, but even the devouring doppelganger that had stolen the immortal purple spirit root and infuriated the Dark Phoenix had completely disappeared. Xianxia could not catch a trace of it. Ah! Rumble! Boom! Xianxia almost spat out blood again. Everything that had happened today was too sullen. The sixth palace was turned upside down, the immortal spiritual root was stolen, and the undead Dark Phoenix was exposed. After such a heavy loss, he still had to take the blame for someone else. As a mighty figure of the universe, even if he was carrying a head of a braised egg on his shoulder, he should not be so cowardly. At this moment, he was extremely unwilling and had started to doubt his life. As Xianxia's roar continued, the entire mountain started to tremble violently again. Thunderous rumbles came from the depths of the ground. The terrifying fissure finally spread to the front. 2/3 of the mountain was cut open, forming a huge chasm. The sixth palace of the 10 absolutes was completely destroyed, and the ancestral ground had crumbled. Screech! Amidst the rumbling noises, the undead Dark Phoenix's furious roar soared into the sky from the depths of the heavenly chasm. Then, the giant mountain collapsed completely. All the experts were horrified, and they quickly rushed into the sky, fleeing as far as they could. Some of the weaker disciples of the sixth palace had their souls torn apart by the phoenix's roar. Their Yuan Shen was destroyed, and blood spurted out from their 7 orifices as they fell into the depths of the heavenly chasm. At the same time, a huge black shadow that almost covered the sky rose from the natural chasm. It was indeed a dark phoenix. Its entire body was pitch black, and its body was surrounded by black dark fire. It spanned hundreds of miles. With a flap of its wings, it turned into a stream of black light that tore apart the void. It actually disappeared into the horizon in less than half a breath's time. What a terrifying aura! What is the origin of this dark phoenix? Something big is going to happen. A terrifying existence that surpasses the universe has appeared. Once it is angry, it will split the sky. The entire Federation will be affected. This matter is too sudden, and the consequences are unimaginable. We must immediately return to the clan and prepare for the upheaval. We have poked a hole in the sky and provoked a terrifying dark phoenix that surpasses the universe. Xianxia, you must explain this matter. The Federation will soon hold the Tenju Celestial Palace accountable. In the midst of the shock, the silver-robed elder, the green-haired man, and the other high-level members of the Federation of the Second Universe exclaimed. There were even warnings and reprimands. After they finished speaking, they all turned around and left. Even the imperial family elder Long Ziwen, who represented the Eternal Dynasty and was also from the human camp, did not stay. With a cold look in his eyes, he glanced at Xianxia and left in a huff. Facing all this, the eyes of the sixth palace master, Xianxia, flickered incessantly. He suppressed the anger in his heart and did not say anything. On the side, the 9 high-level members and powerful figures from the other celestial palaces looked at each other with furrowed brows. In the end, the fifth palace master who had a good relationship with Xianxia sighed faintly and turned to look at Xianxia. The sixth palace has been destroyed, the spiritual root of inheritance is lost, and the dark phoenix of the ancestral land has fled in anger. This place is worthless. There is no reason to stay. Chapter 3206. Enraged demonic dust. Xianxia and the other 9 upper echelons of the celestial palaces left in a hurry. The loss of the immortal purple spirit root was one thing, but the key was that the exposure of the undying dark phoenix was a matter of great importance. The consequences were hard to predict, and it had already affected some kind of arrangement of the entire Tenju celestial palaces. For this reason, Xianxia even put aside his monstrous resentment towards Yi Xian for the time being. As for the messy sixth palace of Tenju Heavenly Palace, there were 3 deputy palace masters to clean up the mess. Besides, he still had countless doppelgangers here, so it was enough to clean up the mess. With the departure of Xianxia and the other high-level figures of the Heavenly Palace, the area around the giant peak where the Sixth Palace was located fell into a complete silence. The experts of the Sixth Palace who had retreated because of the collapse of the giant peak all returned one after another. All of them looked extremely sad, and their eyes seemed to be spitting fire. Everything in front of them was too messy and shocking. The entire giant peak had completely collapsed, and a deep chasm-like crack ran through the entire giant peak from west to east. The ancestral land of the Sixth Palace was completely destroyed. Even if a supreme existence who had surpassed the supreme being of heaven and earth used a heaven-defying divine ability, it would not be able to recover from such a degree of collapse. The Sixth Palace of Tenju Heavenly Palace controlled an extremely vast star area in the third galaxy occupied by the human clan. There were many disciples in the palace. Not to mention the outsiders, there were hundreds of thousands of disciples of the Sixth Palace stationed in and around the ancestral land all year round. This was only the number of official disciples, and some of the outer disciples were even more. The entire Sixth Palace was definitely a behemoth, and the giant peak where the ancestral land of the Sixth Palace was located was the spiritual symbol of this behemoth. But now, this spiritual symbol had completely collapsed. The calamity had come so suddenly that the disciples of the Sixth Palace who had gathered around the giant peak were still in disbelief. Their angry expressions were more or less filled with confusion and bewilderment. On the peak of a mountain not far away, 7 or 8 female figures stood there silently, gazing into the distance. Their gazes all fell on the giant peak of the Sixth Palace's ancestral ground that had completely collapsed. The woman in the lead had a graceful figure. She wore festive red makeup, and her face was covered with a layer of red light gauze. At this moment, she was standing at the edge of a dangerous cliff at the peak of the mountain, allowing the mountain breeze to caress her body and flutter the corners of her clothes. She actually emitted an otherworldly bearing that caused others to be dazzled, and she seemed like an immortal lotus on the precipice, peerless and independent. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew past, lifting up a corner of the woman's red veil. Immediately, a beautiful and flawless face was revealed. However, there were tears on her face, and her eyes were filled with grief and confusion. This woman was none other than Zhao Lingyang, who had covered her face and left from the main hall of the Sixth Palace. The 7 people standing behind her were her maidservants. Originally, there were 13 of them, but as the unforeseen events continued to happen, they were caught off guard. When the master and servant group hurriedly left the ancestral ground of the 10th and 6th palaces, several maidservants unexpectedly perished. To the current Zhao Lingyang, the unforeseen events that happened in a short period of time had completely overturned everything she had before. The home that she had grown up in was gone. Half of her close friends and sisters had also suddenly perished. Even her father, Tianqianzi, who had doted on her since she was young, did not know if he could return safely after going to Tianju Palace to apologize. Or when he would return. Compared to this heartache, the grief of being humiliated and ignored by Prince Xian was really nothing. At this moment, all the grief and indignation in Zhao Lingyang's heart had unknowingly transformed into bitter hatred that was engraved in her heart. It was even to the extent that the light muttering from her mouth seemed as if it came from the 9th level of hell, and it revealed a ghastly coldness that caused one's mind to tremble. Is this my heart tempering in the mortal world? Immortal mortal world? Ha! If the so-called great Tao of immortals actually requires the pain of the mortal world to cultivate one's Tao heart, then I don't want it. Although the great Tao of immortals has its Tao, it is definitely not a lonely mountain path. The mortal world is too painful, and the great Tao does not know the way. From today onwards, I, Zhao Lingyang, will no longer have any sorrow or pain. From now on, I will abandon this mortal world and the immortal path without hesitation. From now on, I will no longer fall into the demonic path. Long Xian, there will finally be a day when I will kill you and offer your head to Mo Chen. Along with the soft muttering coming out of her mouth, the aura emitted from Zhao Lingyang's body also rapidly changed. In just a short minute, that fresh, otherworldly, and unparalleled arrogance and tranquility completely disappeared, transforming into a bone-chilling coldness, callousness, ruthlessness, and boundless resentment that wreaked havoc, and killing intent that soared to the heavens. Boom! Screech! Like a sudden clap of thunder, the cultivation power in Zhao Lingyang's body crazily surged at this moment. Her cultivation, which was originally at the origin 7th stage, actually increased explosively, directly crossing a large realm and stepping into the grotto heaven 7th stage. She raised her head and let out a shrill howl, overflowing with hatred and resentment. Even her long black hair seemed to have been assimilated by some kind of mysterious power. As it danced wildly in the mountain wind, it was actually dyed with frost at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than 3 breaths, the black hair on her head had completely turned into snow-white silver hair. At this moment, Zhao Lingyang had completely transformed. From her body to her divine soul, nothing was left behind. The proud daughter of the heavens had fallen to the demonic path in anger. "Miss, what's wrong with you? Oh my god, your hair. What exactly happened? Lingyang, you look so scary now. Can we not be like this? It's too scary." As Zhao Lingyang raised her head and let out a shrill howl, the black hair on her head was instantly dyed with white frost. The few maidservants who had witnessed all this with their own eyes were already scared out of their wits. As they pleaded softly, they subconsciously retreated slowly. Even their bodies were trembling. At this moment, Zhao Lingyang suddenly became incomparably unfamiliar in their eyes, causing them to be fearful and not dare to approach her at all. "Even you are going to abandon me and leave?" Zhao Lingyang suddenly turned around. Her head of silver hair fluttered in the wind, and the veil on her face had long since been lost, flying away with the wind. What entered into the field of vision of the maidservants was a face that was savage to the extreme. It was peerlessly beautiful and evil, and it was faintly discernible while being enveloped by a layer of faint black qi. Moreover, its gaze was even like 2 sharp blades, and its invisible oppressive gaze actually revealed a strand of coldness that caused one's heart to tremble and suffused with killing intent. "Since you're not willing to accompany me in the demonic path, then I'll send you on your way. Go on your way first." Boom! An explosion shook the heavens, and a dense black qi that was vast and boundless yet cold to the extreme suddenly surged out from Zhao Lingyang's body without any warning. It did not stop at all, and in less than half a breath, it had already arrived with a loud bang, completely enveloping the few maidservants who were retreating in shock not far away. Screech! Just as the figures of the maidservants were submerged and disappeared in the blink of an eye in this shocking demonic qi, a familiar phoenix cry suddenly came from somewhere in the void in the extreme northeast of the mountain peak. Chapter 3207. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Return. In the central domain of the third universe, on the east side of the Death Star field in the crevice between the 2 human factions, in the deepest part of the Death Star vortex, where a shocking change had occurred and caused a huge commotion, a ray of light suddenly appeared without warning and disappeared in a flash. Whoosh! As the almost imperceptible sound of something breaking through the air entered Yi Xian's ears, a familiar system notification sounded in his mind. Ding! Congratulations! The universe coordinate jump is complete. In the next moment, a feeling of weakness that he hadn't felt in a long time surged over like a tide, completely occupying Yi Xian's entire body and mind. The side effects of using the Heaven-Falling Bow's divine ability finally arrived after completing this coordinate jump. Yi Xian's current cultivation was far from what it was in the past. When he used the Heaven-Falling Bow this time, he had only used less than 90% of his cultivation power to condense the energy arrows into the giant bow. Such a strong sense of weakness should not have come. It was all because Yi Xian had immediately performed the universal coordinate jump after using the Heaven-Falling Bow this time before he could recover from his condition. After all, he had crossed the distance of more than half of the universe in a matter of seconds. During the entire process, whether it was his body or his divine sense, the pressure he had to endure could not be ignored. It seems that my cultivation is still too weak. If I perform this kind of coordinate jump next time when I'm seriously injured and about to die, won't I faint on the spot after completing it? After checking the condition of his body, Yi Xian shook his head and laughed bitterly. Then, he waved his hand and took out a large amount of star core origin from the undying world in his body. He threw all of them to the devouring system and immediately ordered the system to absorb the star core origin at full speed. After doing all this, he sat down cross-legged and suspended in the void in the deepest part of the Death Star vortex. He closed his eyes and entered a state of cultivation, absorbing the star core origin with all his strength to refine it and recover his condition. Half a day later, Yi Xian opened his eyes, and there was a gleam in his eyes. After sparing no expense and throwing out a large amount of star core origin to absorb, he had completely recovered in less than a day, and his combat strength had reached its peak. Unfortunately, the expected system notification did not appear. After waiting quietly for about 10 seconds, Yi Xian smiled bitterly again and shook his head with a self-deprecating sigh. In order to recover as soon as possible, He took out the star core origin from his undying world and fed it to the devouring system. Not only was there a huge amount of them, the grade was also shocking. There were a total of 3 Class 9 colored star cores. According to his estimations, the simultaneous use of 3 ninth grade 9 colored pills would not only allow him to quickly recover, but would also allow him to make another breakthrough in his cultivation base. He was the only one who dared to think of such a thing. The key was that he had been pleasantly surprised too often in the past. He had almost gotten used to it. As a result, he was unexpectedly unable to make a breakthrough in his cultivation, causing him to faintly feel a sense of loss in his heart. Could it be that after entering the black hole realm, even the effects of Class 9 colored star core origin have been greatly weakened? Thinking of this possibility, Yi Xian felt even more uneasy. If this was really the case, it would be a big problem for him to increase his cultivation base in the future. Although he had a lot of cultivation resources in his hands and had many types, in terms of energy grade, other than the 107 nine-eyed golden crystals that he had obtained from the primordial cage, which he had always kept and did not dare to use casually, there was no other type that could surpass the Class 9 colored star core origin. In fact, although the Class 9 nine-eyed golden crystals were not inferior to the Class 9 colored star core origin in terms of energy grade, and even surpassed it by quite a bit, the attributes of these two cultivation resources were different. The star core origin was a general-purpose cultivation resource. Whether it was the human race, the various races of the Federation of the Second Universe, or even the demon kin and the mech race, all of them could smoothly absorb the energy from the star core origin. After absorbing it into their bodies, all they had to do was refine it. As for the speed of absorption, that was another problem that had nothing to do with the star core origin. However, the Class 9 nine-eyed golden crystals were completely different. This kind of cultivation resource only had an excellent effect on increasing and strengthening one's mental strength. Its effect on the cultivation base and divine sense of the human race was basically zero. It was completely negligible. This also applied to all other grades of multi-eyed sense crystals and even ordinary demonic sense star crystals. Therefore, even though the 107 nine-eyed golden crystals in Yi Xian's possession were of better quality, it was impossible to use them to replace the Class 9 colored star core origin and absorb them at critical moments in the future to break through the bottleneck of the cultivation base and make a quick breakthrough. Moreover, there were only 107 nine-eyed golden crystals in total. When the mental strength source core evolved in the future, Yi Xian would have to rely on them, so he did not dare to squander them easily. It shouldn't be because my cultivation base has reached the black hole realm. Otherwise, why would those whose cultivation base is far beyond the black hole realm be so eager to obtain the Class 9 colored star core origin? Could it be because I've already used a few of them before? My physical cultivation base and divine sense have an obvious resistance to this kind of top-grade star core origin energy. Because of this, the breakthrough effect of the Class 9 colored star core origin energy has been greatly weakened. As Yi Xian muttered to himself, his mind worked quickly as he quickly analyzed the various possible factors that could have caused this unexpected situation. Gradually, he came up with an answer. Although this was only a guess at the moment, it made his heart sink to the bottom of the valley in an instant. It had not been easy for him to enter the ranks of the black hole realm experts. He had been looking forward to continuing to work hard and rushing to the Grotto Heaven realm, the Void realm, and all the way to the Universe realm in the shortest time possible. But now, it seemed that if he did not solve this problem and find a cultivation resource that could replace the Class 9 colored star core origin, or at least the energy level of the star core origin, the speed of his cultivation base improvement would come to a halt. It would be difficult for him to make rapid leaps and bounds like before. Fortunately, I've obtained a large amount of devouring origin. Although the devouring origin has been reduced to a system currency after entering the big space environment, and I can no longer refine and integrate it to improve my bloodline and cultivation base by directly absorbing its energy. But the devouring origin is obviously extraordinary. Even in the big space environment, the top forces, including the Heavenly Legacy clan and the various races of the Federation, are still scrambling for it. This alone shows its value. At the thought of this, Yi Xian's spirits were suddenly lifted. His originally depressed mood instantly rose again, and he even became a little excited. All the top forces of the 3 universes, including the Celestials' Legacy clan, were in desperate need of devouring source crystals, but none of them had leaked any information about the specific uses of this rare resource. This was far too abnormal and bizarre. Could it be that the devouring origin crystal has other uses? They don't even know about the devouring system and haven't mastered it? Chapter 3208. Gold Squandering Cave. After all his efforts, Yi Xian was greatly disappointed. The data in the devouring system's internal database regarding the source of devouring had not changed at all. Everything that could be learned was the same as before. Even after Yi Xian provided various clues and asked the system to make an evaluation and analysis, there was no particularly constructive new discovery. All his efforts were in vain. It seems that my thinking is still a little too simple. Since the major forces of the three universes are so keen on devouring source crystals, they must know some unknown secret. It's a pity that the information has been sealed so tightly that not a single bit of it has leaked out. In the end, Yi Xian could only helplessly give up for the time being. He shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that the Tower of Antiquity has been transferred to the devouring clone. Otherwise, Xianxia, as the remnant soul of the sixth palace master of the 10 ultimates, would most likely know some inside information. But now, it's hard to count on him. Xianxia's remnant soul had been directly thrown into the 9th floor of the Tower of Antiquity through the devouring system. Even if it was still lingering at death's door and had not fallen, there was no way to summon it in a short time. Then, Yi Xian thought of Uncle Kong and Old Devil Mosquito Butcher. He was still not very clear about Uncle Kong's identity. The latter had always avoided this question, but according to Yi Xian's estimation, even if he was not a high-ranking member of the imperial family of the Immortal Dynasty, he must have an unusual relationship with such an existence. He might know a little about the secret of devouring the source crystal. After returning to Planet Triumph, he could definitely contact the Immortal Star and give it a try. As for Old Devil Mosquito Butcher, needless to say, this old man was at least on par with the 6th palace master of the 10 ultimates, Xianxia. Back then, he had roared and forced the 6th palace master, Huai Dongzi, to retreat thousands of miles away. It could be said that his ferocity was monstrous. Since then, the old man had become even more mysterious to Yi Xian than the Mad Mosquito Emperor. Yang Kai hadn't had the time to investigate this matter before, but now that everything in the 6th Palace of 10 Absolutes had come to an end and Yi Xian's true body had returned to the Death Star field, after arriving on Planet Victorious Return, he would definitely investigate this matter as soon as possible. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yang Kai could ask Old Ghost Mosquito Butcher about the secrets of devouring source crystals. After calming down, Yi Xian entered the exchange shop to check. Yi Xian's harvest from the previous incident in the Death Star Vortex could be said to be extremely astonishing. He'd obtained more than 56,000 origin devouring crystals, and the other hundreds of rare minerals were nearly 10 million. The other rare minerals were not cultivation resources. Most of them were important elements and materials needed for refining and technological manufacturing. Yi Xian planned to hand them over to Naples after returning to Planet Victorious Return. The development of Victorious Return and the entire fleet needed to be accelerated, so these mineral resources were urgently needed. As for the 56,000 source devour crystals, Yi Xian planned to keep some of them and use the rest to exchange. After the devour system was upgraded to Starry Sky rank, all the products in the exchange shop had been completely updated. There were some things that even Yi Xian was envious of, but unfortunately, he didn't have the ability to exchange for them. Now, the opportunity had finally come. He even hoped to see if he could find the urgently needed cultivation resources in the exchange shop that could be used to replace the level 99 colored star core origin and had better energy quality. With this kind of expectation, Yi Xian plunged into the exchange shop and browsed excitedly. In the exchange shop that came with the system, the host could exchange for all kinds of things, such as divine weapons, elixirs, martial arts, treasures, puppets, and so on. Before stepping into the Starry Sky, Yi Xian had used the devouring origin to level up the system and obtain some powerful bloodlines, such as the Sword God bloodline, the War God bloodline, the Immortal Phoenix bloodline, and so on. Every bloodline had different abilities, but unfortunately, after entering the vast Starry Sky, all of these bloodlines were cleared by the system. At the same time, the exchange shop had also been updated, providing a large number of universe-level bloodlines that could be exchanged. However, although there were countless races in the universe, most of them had bloodlines that were not up to standard. The system had given him a Source Devour crystal, but Yi Xian had never used it. A single Source Devour crystal could only be exchanged for the most common bloodlines and treasures in the exchange shop. Now, Yi Xian had a lot of Source Devour crystals, but because he had the Supreme Primordial Golden Divine Dragon bloodline and the mutated evolution of the Demonic Dragon attribute, it was as if he had two Supreme Primordial bloodlines at the same time. Therefore, he was not interested in the universe-level bloodlines that could be provided in the exchange shop. Some of the universe-level bloodlines were quite good, such as the Immemorial Thunder Dragon bloodline, the heavenly demon fire phoenix bloodline, the giant-tailed celestial fox bloodline, the golden flame godly eagle bloodline, the feathered winged rock bloodline, the sky-swallowing colored python, the Vajra chief wolf, and so on. If he were to exchange for them, he would need at least hundreds of source devour crystals, and at most thousands of source devour crystals. Yi Xian had been envious of them before, but now his vision was completely different. In addition, the exchange shop also had a large number of cultivation methods, divine weapons, magic treasures, and even battlesuits, battleships, fortresses, and so on. Yi Xian carefully reviewed them one by one, and soon found a problem that made him not know whether to laugh or cry. Of the large number of treasures and resources that could be exchanged, nearly half of them were things that Yi Xian did not need, or he already had something similar in his hands. After all, he had first taken away all the resources that the Demonkin Scout Corps had collected in the graveyard of the meteorite for decades, then ransacked the Demonkin Star area, and extorted a lot of treasures from more than 10,000 Federation elites in the Myriad prison. His collection was already extremely rich and varied. Because of this, in the blink of an eye, only half of the items and treasures that Yi Xian still had exchange value were left in the system shop. Of course, even half of the items was still a huge number. The problem was that among the half of the top-level resources, 80% of them were things that Yi Xian did not have the right to exchange for. He did not even have the qualifications to check their specific attributes. Except for an obscure product name, everything else was displayed with question marks, including the number of source devour crystals required to exchange for them. Obviously, these top-level resources were not available for the time being, and some conditions had not been met yet. Although the remaining 20% did not have this problem, the exchange threshold was frighteningly high. Thousands of source crystals were required to exchange for them, and there was no one with less than 1,000 source crystals. Instead, there was a dazzling array of items that cost tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of source crystals. Seeing this, Yi Xian's back was dripping with cold sweat. He suddenly felt like an ordinary person shopping in a high-end luxury store. It was too scary. He originally thought that he should be quite rich, but after carefully looking around, he suddenly found that he had tens of thousands of source crystals in his hands. After all, he was still not out of poverty. Chapter 3209. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio Calamity Dragon Pill. After circling around, Yi Xian was disappointed in the end. He had hoped that he could temporarily replace the 9-colored Star Core origin, but he could not find a better cultivation resource in terms of energy quality. Perhaps in the small half of the items whose exchange price was still a question mark, there would be some among the items that were not normally released. But the result was the same. Even if that was the case, it was meaningless now. Yi Xian did not even have the qualifications to exchange for it. Disappointed, he had no choice but to put this matter to the back of his mind for the time being. He continued to browse the other items and gradually understood what he should do. From the moment he first entered the Starry Sky environment until now, when he finally stepped into the Black Hole realm and became a true Starry Sky powerhouse, Yi Xian's path could be said to be extremely difficult. If it wasn't for his heaven-defying luck, he probably would have died countless times already. What was embarrassing was that Yi Xian had to rely on external forces to resolve the various dangers he encountered during the process, such as the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn and the Headless Infant Corpse. Although these external forces were indispensable for Starry Sky Masters and were part of their overall strength, it was inevitable that they would rely on them at the beginning when their cultivation was too weak. Otherwise, they would die young before they could grow up. But now it was different. Entering the Black Hole realm meant that he had officially entered the ranks of the true Starry Sky Masters. The future path of growth would be even more difficult. Being a Universe Master was only the starting line of a higher level. When the time came, it would even involve the comprehension and control of the universe's Starry Sky principles. From now on, Yi Xian had to rely on his own strength, step by step, to become truly strong through the trials of life and death. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to go further on the Starry Sky path. He decided to improve his combat strength as much as possible and make preparations for this. In terms of cultivation strength, he could only improve step by step. He already had the best bloodline, cultivation methods, and magical powers, so he did not need them for the time being. However, there was still room for improvement in the 3 basic treasures of a Starry Sky Master: the armor, the combat weapon, and the warship. At the very least, he had to upgrade all of them to quasi-Starry Sky treasures. In addition to the indestructible glass armor, there were still 2 more treasures that needed to be upgraded. They were the Dongshu shuttle and the Devil Blood Star Tier's sword. These two treasures were both at the epic star grade. The Dongshu shuttle had undergone 6 fusions, while the Devil Blood Star tier sword had undergone 5 fusions. Very quickly, Yi Xian found 2 exchange items from the exchange shop. They were the items that were most suitable for fusing with them and increasing their grade. Other than that, he also exchanged for 2 extremely rare heavenly materials and earthly treasures. He planned to use them to improve his bloodline and abilities. There were 4 items in total, but they consumed 90% of Yi Xian's 50,000 devouring origin crystals. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few thousand crystals left. Although it was a little painful, Yi Xian gritted his teeth and submitted the exchange request. The next moment, the familiar sound of a system notification rang out in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. The exchange is successful. 4 treasures have been selected. The total amount of devouring origin crystals required is 50,800 crystals. The system has automatically completed the exchange. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched as he subconsciously probed his body. As expected, there weren't many devouring origin crystals left in his undying world, so they should have been directly consumed by the system. After all, the exchange items provided by the system store couldn't appear out of thin air. Bloodlines, divine abilities, cultivation techniques, and the like could be stored in the system as data. However, Yi Xian had exchanged for heavenly materials and earthly treasures and rare minerals. They were all physical objects. The system had digested the devouring origin crystals and used a mysterious method that Yi Xian could not understand to transform the energy. It created the 4 treasures that Yi Xian had exchanged for. Such a method was too shocking. After entering the starry sky environment, this was the first time that Yi Xian had exchanged for treasures from the system shop. For a moment, he was filled with emotions. At the same time, the system notification in his mind did not stop. It continued to ring out, briefly introducing the 4 treasures that Yi Xian had exchanged for. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a treasure. Great 5 Elements Annihilation Disc Array. Offensive Treasure, Solidifying Disc Array. It can transform energy into 5 types of annihilating lightning. It can be divided or combined. It can affect the whole body. If divided, it can penetrate the Earth's crust and destroy mountains. If combined, it can destroy an area and fall into the void. Grade: Starry Sky Epic Grade. Quality: Flawless Perfect. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a treasure. Withered Demon Blade. Replica. It is said that before the heavens and earth were separated, there was a great demon that lost its memory. The evil in its heart was no longer there. It hid in the depths of the void and was in chaos all day long. One day, the evil completely recovered. The great demon was born and turned into a withered blade. It shone with a black light and killed countless living things. The souls of the dead were destroyed. It was the Withered Demon Blade. Grade: Starry Sky Epic Grade. Quality: Flawless Replica. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a treasure. Avicii Origin Crystal. Energy Crystal, condensed from the endless Avicii 9 underworlds. Grade: Starry Sky Epic Grade. Quality: Pure and flawless. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a treasure. Calamity Dragon Pill. Refined according to the ancient recipe, it is necessary for a great flood dragon to transform into a dragon. Grade: Starry Sky Epic Grade. Quality: Excellent grade with slight flaws. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a treasure. Please check and confirm. As soon as the last notification sounded, Yi Xian felt a slight tremor in his body. In the blink of an eye, 4 different top-grade treasures appeared in his body. They were the items that the system had given him. A crystal the size of an egg, dark and shiny. This Avicii Origin Crystal was condensed from the endless Avicii 9 underworlds. He wondered if it could increase the power of the fallen sky bow. After all, it was the bloodline ability of the ancient Xianxia. The aura of the latter was similar to this Avicii Origin Crystal. There should be hope. A golden elixir shaped like a dragon's eye. This elixir was specially prepared by Yi Xian for the black gold dragon scale in his Sea of Consciousness. Since it was a special elixir for the flood dragon to transform into a dragon, it should have some effect on Yi Xian's devil dragon bloodline. He might as well give it a try. As for the Great 5 Elements Annihilation Formation Disc, it was only the size of a palm. It looked like a compass, but its surface was engraved with countless obscure runes. It had a strong ancient aura, and there was also a faint sense of endless sharpness. Yi Xian planned to use this formation disk to perform the 7th system fusion with the Dongshu shuttle. If there were no accidents, once the fusion was successful, the Dongshu shuttle's attack power would be greatly improved. After the previous 6 fusions, the shuttle was already relatively perfect. The speed formation, defense formation, and concealment formation were all present. There was also the use of space folding technology in the shuttle. In addition, the short-distance space jump and long-distance wormhole jump ability had been perfected. The only shortcoming was the main cannon of the shuttle. After all, the shuttle was less than 500 meters long. No matter how big the caliber of the star-obliterating cannon was, it could only reach 200 meters at most. It couldn't even blow up a giant fortress with a diameter of 10,000 meters. After getting used to the terrifying power of the 20,000-meter death ray cannon in the space fortress, Yi Xian couldn't stand the power of the star-obliterating cannon in the Dongshu shuttle. Chapter 32:10. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Withered Demon Blood Blade. The last treasure to be exchanged was called the Withered Demon Blade. Just the name of this blade was already amazing. Previously, when Yi Xian browsed through this type of magic treasure in the system exchange shop, he was immediately attracted by it and quickly confirmed that he would exchange for this blade. Unfortunately, it was just a replica, which made him feel rather regretful. Even so, its grade was still at the epic star grade. Its appearance was eye-catching pitch black, and the shape of the blade was extremely ferocious and domineering. Although it did not leak any aura, it imperceptibly gave off a domineering aura. It could be said to be overflowing with demonic intent. This blade was prepared by Yi Xian for the Devil Blood Star Tier's sword. The two were one sword and one saber. He wondered what form they would take after the successful fusion. In fact, Yi Xian preferred the Withered Demon Blade. Although the sword was strong, the saber was more domineering. He was more inclined towards the latter and was already looking forward to it. Just as Yi Xian was excitedly playing with the 4 treasures to be exchanged, the system notifications sounded in his mind again. 2 consecutive notifications asked Yi Xian if he would like to activate the supplementary system immediately and begin the fusion. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Discovered treasures that can be fused. Devil Blood Star Tier Sword, Withered Demon Blade. Will you fuse them immediately? Ding! Congratulations to the host. Discovered treasures that can be fused. Dongshu Shuttle, Great 5 Elements Annihilation Formation Disc. Will you fuse them immediately? Yi Xian did not hesitate and immediately gave an affirmative reply. Moreover, he wanted to fuse them together. After making the decision, he waved his hand and stored the Withered Demon Blade and Great 5 Elements Annihilation Formation Disc into his body again. At the same time, he handed the Dongshu Shuttle and Devil Blood Star Tier Sword to the Devouring System, including a large pile of Star Core Source that he had just taken out from the Undying World to use for the fusion. There were originally 1,000 mosquito beasts, 1,000 soldier ladles, and 1,000 demon slaves led by Gue Hai Yi Dao in the Dongshu Shuttle. If the system was to fuse, all life forms in the shuttle would have to evacuate in advance. However, there was no need to consider this problem now. When Yi Xian started his preparations outside of the Death Star Vortex, he had already sent out all the forces in the Dongshu Shuttle. Once all the preparations, the system notification sounded. Congratulations to the host. Fused. Devil Blood Star Tier's Sword. Progress 1. Ding! Congratulations to host. The 7th fusion of the Dongshu Shuttle has begun. Progress 1. Yi Xian heaved a long sigh of relief, but his heartstrings were inexplicably tight. From the beginning to the end, although he had fused his weapons, armor and battleships many times, he had never failed. So far he had succeeded 6 times in a row, and the Dongshu Shuttle had succeeded 7 times in a row. However, the further they progressed, the greater the chances of failure. Similarly, the further they progressed, the greater the losses to Yi Xian would be. Worried about the gains and losses, he could not help but feel a little anxious at this moment. However, the more successful the fusion was, the more time it would take to continue the fusion. This was really a torment. This fusion of the battleship and the battleship would take at least 6 or 7 days to produce a result, which really made people speechless. Not long after, Yi Xian finally calmed down and no longer worried about the result of the fusion. He threw this matter to the back of his mind and took out some weeping soul beasts. Since he was bored, he could cultivate his spiritual power to pass the time. After sitting cross-legged and closing his eyes, Yi Xian entered a state of cultivation. Soon, he forgot about everything and let time pass. He was neither surprised nor happy. After a few days, Yi Xian finally exited from the state of cultivation. As soon as he opened his eyes, the notification of the devouring system sounded in his mind. The fusion of the battleship and the battleship had finally been completed. Congratulations to the host. Devil Blood Star Tier's sword has been successfully fused for the 6th time. Treasure obtained, Withered Demon Bloodblade. Grade: Quasi-Starry Sky Absolute Treasure. Quality: Flawless Perfect. Congratulations to the host. Dongshu Shuttle has been successfully fused for the 7th time. Grade: Quasi-Starry Sky Absolute Treasure. Quality: Flawless Perfect. As expected, the fusion of the two treasures was carried out at the same time, and the result was still a success. There were no accidents, which made Yi Xian relax. What surprised him was that after the two treasures successfully completed the fusion, their grades were both upgraded to Quasi-Starry Sky Absolute Treasure, which surprised him. At this point, Yi Xian's three most basic Starry Sky Absolute Treasures, the battle armor and the battleship, had all reached Quasi-Starry Sky Absolute Treasure. If news of this spread out and was known by others, it would probably cause an earthquake. This kind of man-made treasure was not comparable to those natural treasures like the Rai Di Seal. Basically, Quasi-Starry Sky Absolute Treasure was the peak. Except for the life fortress of the human race's technological pioneer, Xing Bo, Yi Xian had never heard of a second man-made Starry Sky Absolute Treasure. After completing the 7th fusion, the name of the Dongshu shuttle did not change, but the runes engraved on the surface of the shuttle were more complex. They were so densely packed that if one looked at them carefully, they would make one dizzy. This should be the result of the Grand 5 Elements Annihilation Array disk being completely integrated into the shuttle, turning into an array pattern that covered the entire shuttle. As for the extent of the increase in the Dongshu shuttle's attack power and the specific power of this array after it was activated, Yi Xian did not investigate it for the time being. When he had time later, he would find a suitable space to activate this array and blast it a few times to find out. After waving his hand and storing the Dongshu shuttle into his body, he turned his gaze to the Withered Demon Bloodblade. Yi Xian did not like the name of the Devil Blood Star Tier sword to begin with, but the Withered Demon Bloodblade sounded much more pleasing to his ears. More importantly, after completing this fusion, the form of this combat weapon had clearly undergone an earth-shattering change. Previously it was a sword, but now it was a saber. Moreover, it was a completely black and glossy, covered in fine blood runes, and its form was incomparably ferocious and domineering. It could be said to be perfect. Yi Xian's eyes burned fiercely as he fiddled with it for a long time with fanaticism. However, he could not find a single flaw in it. He was too satisfied. Only when his emotions calmed down again did he suddenly remember the sword spirit that was born in the Devil Blood Star Tier sword. After this fusion, the Star Tier sword had completely changed, turning into a heaven-shaking demonic blade. Could the original sword spirit have been erased because of this? Thinking of this, Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly injected his consciousness into the demonic blade to investigate, but the result was a false alarm. The demonic blood of the sword spirit was still there, but its aura had changed. Amidst the familiar bloodthirsty demonic aura, there was clearly a very mysterious demonic aura, which was even more astonishing. However, it had fallen into a deep slumber, as if some kind of change was brewing. This is clearly the effect of the Withered Demon Bloodblade's demonic aura, causing the sword spirit to transform and evolve. This is simply a pleasant surprise. After pondering for a moment, Yi Xian quickly understood and became even more delighted. After this transformation, the demonic blood of the sword spirit would only become stronger. When this transformation was superimposed on the Withered Demon Bloodblade, the most direct effect was that the demonic aura of the blade would become even stronger. Yi Xian was very much looking forward to it. He could not wait to immediately feel the supreme demonic aura of this peerless demonic blade. The word sword spirit and demonic blood are not very appropriate, but blade spirit sounds really awkward. Chapter 32:11. The crisis of the remaining chapters: battle weapons, battle armor, and battleships. When these three most basic Starry Sky personal treasures were upgraded to Quasi-Starry Sky grade, Yi Xian's battle prowess instantly soared by a large margin. But that was not the end of it. The Avicii origin crystal and the Calamity Dragon pill were still not used. If nothing unexpected happened, these two items should be able to enhance both Yi Xian's fallen sky bow and the power of the demon dragon's bloodline, greatly increasing his combat strength. In addition, with the help of the 3 combat armors, Yi Xian's overall combat strength would definitely be reborn. It would be incomparable to his current strength. However, considering that it had already taken him several days to fuse with the weapon, plus the time he had spent in the 6th palace of Shijue, it had already been half a month. Yi Xian was really worried that something would happen in Triumph City, so after pondering for a while, he immediately dispelled the idea of continuing to stay here and use up the Avicii crystal and Calamity Dragon transforming pill in one go. I can only put this matter aside for the time being and return to Planet Victorious Return first. Once the situation stabilizes, I'll deal with it again. After making his decision, Yi Xian immediately kept the withered demon bloodblade into his undying world. With a wave of his hand, he summoned the Dongshu shuttle and stepped into it. Very quickly, he turned into a streak of purple light and flew off in search of the exit. Half a day later, he finally found the void passage to leave the Death Star vortex. Yi Xian was relieved. Without hesitation, the Dongshu shuttle's speed increased sharply. In the blink of an eye, it turned into an almost undetectable ray of light and rushed out of the Death Star vortex, heading straight for Planet Triumph. Although only 10 days had passed, the changes in the Death Star field were as if the sky and earth had been turned upside down. It was completely different now. For thousands of years, the entire Death Star field was practically filled with experts from various races. It appeared to be extraordinarily bustling, like a Starfield-grade void mine. Although the conditions were harsh, the people were quite prosperous. But now, with the disappearance of the source of source crystals, this dilapidated Death Star field instantly lost its original attraction and value. So almost all the starry sky masters who had been lurking here had evacuated. Even the Tenju heavenly palaces and the immortal dynasty's majestic bases in this star field, Black Sky City and Old Sioux City, were the same. Black Sky City was originally a city-shaped magical weapon, so it was very convenient to take it and leave. As for Old Sioux City, what should be torn down was torn down, and what should be abandoned was abandoned. It no longer had its former grandeur, and was in ruins. Only Yi Xian's Triumph City was still rooted here. Not only was there not a single soul to be seen in this vast expanse of stars, it was even to the extent that even the boundless space and countless stars of various sizes had completely withered and died, and it revealed a shocking feeling of loneliness and desolation. Yi Xian drove the Dongshu shuttle at an extremely fast speed and streaked across the void. Along the way, he didn't see even half a figure of a starry sky master. Even though he was mentally prepared, this kind of boundless desolation still shocked him slightly. The uneasiness in his heart gradually grew stronger, and he was afraid that his triumphant return would be like this. Everyone had already left. With continuous leaps and bounds, Yi Xian used less than a day to rush from the eastern death region to the Triumph City in the western star field. The familiar majestic city was reflected in his line of sight. Clearly, it was still holding the defensive light shield and had not been abandoned. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. He was finally relieved. With a thought, the Dongshu shuttle turned into a purple light and plunged into the surface of the giant planet. Soon, he arrived in front of Triumph City. Then, he took a step forward and waved his hand to store the Dongshu shuttle in the undying world within his body. His figure flashed, and he had already passed through the defensive light shield and entered the majestic city. Everything in the majestic city was as usual, in good order, and there were no changes. With old devil Mosquito Butcher here, no one dared to lightly offend the heaven's might of heaven and earth. Of course, Yi Xian was an exception. Now he was already infamous. Many starry sky masters' expressions changed when they talked about him, and they didn't dare to provoke him anymore. Even some of the more powerful forces and races had developed fear. This time, the 6th palace of 10 ultimates had been tormented miserably. Even the heaven and earth mighty expert's head had been blasted into a glossy black braised egg. It was really too cruel and too terrifying. Even the experts in Triumph City were scared out of their wits. At this moment, seeing Yi Xian suddenly return, their expressions changed one after another. Although they weren't alarmed, the expressions on their faces were incomparably strange. Yi Xian was confused, and after a moment of realization, he was immediately embarrassed. Naples, Ying Tai, Guihai Yidao, Li Wan, and the others quickly rushed over after hearing the news. Old devil Mosquito Butcher was still the same as before. When he saw Yi Xian, he grinned and scowled as he jogged over. Yi Xian immediately felt a strong wretched aura rushing towards him, and he immediately frowned. A grand heaven and earth mighty expert, yet he didn't have the dignity of a master at all. He was so filthy that he could compete with a pimp. This old thing's wretchedness was definitely incurable. It had long since seeped into his bones. From this, it could be seen that he wasn't pretending before. It was his nature. Yi Xian's expression was strange, but he felt a little better. At least on this point, the old guy wasn't deliberately deceiving him. As for concealing his cultivation, that was even less of a problem. There were countless experts in the vast starry sky. How many of them didn't do this? After being surrounded by his subordinates and exchanging pleasantries, Yi Xian found an opportunity and quickly dispersed the others, leaving behind only old ghost mosquito butcher. There were too many questions in his heart, so he didn't have the mood to consider anything else. He only wanted to immediately resolve his doubts. Unfortunately, the old guy was really hard to deal with. As soon as he heard Yi Xian ask about his identity and origin, as well as his purpose and scheme for deigning himself to be Yi Xian's servant, Old Devil Mosquito Butcher immediately began to play Tai Chi, evading the topic. In short, he didn't say anything serious. After talking for a long time, Yi Xian still didn't get any useful information. The doubts in his mind were still there, and there was no progress. In the end, he helplessly stopped. This was a heaven and earth mighty expert. If he didn't say anything, who would dare to force him to answer? Before, it didn't matter if he didn't know the identity of the other party. Now that he knew, if Yi Xian still considered himself the master and scolded him, he would be asking for humiliation. However, he didn't give up. There would be plenty of opportunities to beat around the bush. One day, he would find out all the truth. After putting this matter aside, he immediately asked about the secret of the devouring source crystal and confessed that he needed a cultivation resource to replace the level 9 colored planetary core origin. The effect of the 9-colored planetary core origin when breaking through the bottleneck seemed to be almost useless to him. He had encountered this problem when he had just entered the black hole realm. Obviously, it was quite serious. He still had a long way to go. I don't know much about the devouring source crystal, but I think it must have some special use. You have to inquire about this from the everlasting dynasty. Ordinary people don't know much about it. As for the fact that the effect of the level 9 colored planetary core origin gradually weakens after entering the black hole realm, it's even more impossible. I've never heard of it. Before Yi Xian could finish his words, Old Devil Mosquito Butcher immediately took over the topic. He looked at Yi Xian, who was staring at him like an idiot, and shook his head and sighed. There must be something wrong with you or your cultivation method. Yi Xian's mind exploded. It was as if he had been enlightened and instantly came to a realization. Chapter 32:12. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Another path of evolution. Yi Xian had obtained the Dongshu scripture from the official auction house of the Heavenly River planet using a high-grade star core. It was known as a top-notch starry sky treasure level technique, and its value was immeasurable. Unfortunately, it only had the cultivation method for the first 8 realms, and it was severely damaged. Otherwise, it would not have fallen into the hands of Yi Xian. The original owner would not have put it up for auction, and the other experts who participated in the auction would not have missed it easily. They would have fought endlessly for it. Before Yi Xian started cultivating this technique, he had actually thought about it carefully before he finally decided on it. At that time, the black hole realm was too far away for him, and he could not touch it in a short time. He could have cultivated this technique while searching for the cultivation method for the 8th realm and beyond. He had the devouring system as his foundation, so he was quite confident. Unfortunately, the world was unpredictable. In less than half a year, his cultivation realm had soared to the level 1 black hole, but he had long forgotten about looking for the follow-up cultivation method, so he had never looked for it at all. It was only today that he suddenly realized that a crisis had quietly befallen him without him noticing. Now that the path of cultivation had been cut off, Yi Xian's cultivation would stop at the level 1 black hole realm before he found the next cultivation method, and it would be difficult for him to advance any further. This technique was known as a starry sky treasure level technique, and its value was immeasurable. The sea of stars was vast and boundless, so it was not realistic to want to find the next cultivation method in a short time. Although Yi Xian did have some clues, and if he wanted to, He could find the person who had entrusted him with the technique from the official database of the Heavenly River planet. However, it was meaningless. If there was any hope of finding the next cultivation method, the other party would never give up the first half of the incomplete technique. In addition, the Tower of Desolation's inheritance and the headless infant corpse originally had hopes of gathering the complete void dimension art. The former had an extraordinary origin. Most of the bloodline secrets and supernatural abilities of the Desolate Era's creatures had been passed down in the tower. Even if it wasn't complete, all of the inheritances were weaker versions. If the tower really had the inheritance records of the Dongshu scripture, it would not only contain the cultivation method for the first 8 realms, no matter how incomplete it was. At least, it would allow Yi Xian to have no worries in the short term. The headless infant corpse was the same. Its origins were far too astonishing. It could command all existences on its side during the War of the Ancients, including Supreme Master Huang. If the Dongshu giant tortoise had participated in that battle, it would be of great use to Yi Xian even if the headless corpse only knew bits and pieces of information regarding the whereabouts of its inheritance. It could guide him in the right direction, and it would be much easier for him to find it. Unfortunately, all of this was just wishful thinking. Yi Xian was basically certain that both the Tower of Desolation's inheritance and the headless infant corpse were completely unaware of the Dongshu giant tortoise's cultivation method inheritance. This was because the Dongshu giant tortoise had never appeared in the ancient battle that Yi Xian had seen in the inheritance. Even though it should be a supreme being from the same faction as the headless infant corpse, golden divine dragon, and other existences, it was just too mysterious. Back then, it didn't participate in the battle, so there was a high chance that it was still alive, not dying yet. Even if the Dongshu skill, which represented its bloodline inheritance, had appeared, it couldn't have appeared before or after the ancient battle. There had to be more to it. If Yi Xian tried to find it from the Tower of Desolation's inheritance and the headless infant corpse, it would be in vain. There are thousands of paths to cultivation. Although there are differences in power and speed of advancement, in the end, all paths lead to the same destination. Since the path of this skill has been cut off, why don't we change to another path and take another path of evolution? We can cultivate while looking for the remaining parts of this skill. Why should we worry about it? Seeing Yi Xian frowning and worrying, Old Devil Mosquito Butcher rolled his eyes again. Obviously, he didn't take this matter to heart. He said in an extremely relaxed tone, for example, the gene cultivation fluid popular in the human race's science and technology camp is a good choice. The biggest drawback of this path is that high-grade gene cultivation fluid is hard to come by, and its value is too high. It's not a problem for you at all. What's there to hesitate about? Yi Xian was stunned. At first, he was a little tempted, but then he reacted immediately. He glared at Old Devil Mosquito Butcher and said, "Can you not come up with so many lousy ideas? It's enough that the path ahead is cut off once. How can I make the same mistake twice? Have you been kicked in the head by a donkey?" Yi Xian had some understanding of the evolution path of using gene cultivation fluid to break the shackles of the human body's potential and break through the bottleneck to improve one's realm. This evolution method was efficient and direct. If the gene cultivation fluid was effective, one could immediately break through the bottleneck and enter the next minor realm. Even if it failed, one could at most try a few more times. The level 1 gene cultivation fluid was suitable for the first major realm, the core realm. The level 2 gene cultivation fluid could only be used after one entered the meteor realm. Otherwise, one could not bear it and would face the danger of exploding. The gene cultivation fluid used by black hole realm experts was level 8. The level 9 gene cultivation fluid corresponded to the 9th major realm, the origin realm. In other words, if Yi Xian decided to take this path of evolution, he could at least enter the 10th major realm, the Grotto Heaven realm, because he could get his hands on the level 9 gene cultivation fluid at any time. But that was all. After entering the Grotto Heaven realm, he would still face the dilemma of having his path cut off. The level 9 gene cultivation fluid was the highest level available in the Everlasting Dynasty. Yi Xian had never heard of the so-called level 10 gene cultivation fluid. Even if you end up in the Grotto Heaven realm, it's still better than being stuck in the black hole realm, right? The difference between two major realms is like heaven and earth. Mosquito Butcher did not agree with Yi Xian's point of view. He shook his head and said, "This evolution path of using gene cultivation fluid to break the shackles of the human body is completely different from the cultivation method you practice. They do not conflict with each other. No matter how far you go, as long as you can find the next cultivation method of the Dongshu formula, You can continue to practice it at any time. It will not affect you. Besides, don't think that this path is destined to stop at the Grotto Heaven realm. This saying is outdated, because the level 10 gene cultivation fluid has been successfully developed. Just a few days ago, the entire dynasty was shocked because the family that developed the level 10 gene cultivation fluid revealed even more shocking news. The bottleneck of the development of the gene cultivation fluid that had been stagnant for many years has been broken, and a milestone has been achieved. Perhaps one day in the near future, level 11, or even higher, gene cultivation fluids will be released one after another. This evolution path that has been stagnant for many years can finally take a big step forward again. What? There is such a thing? I have only been away for a few days, and even the level 10 gene cultivation fluid has been developed? The news was so shocking that Xianxia almost could not believe it. However, Mosquito Butcher would not joke about such a thing. Besides, he could find out the truth after checking it later, so he believed it immediately. He immediately asked, "Besides, has the news been confirmed? Is the family that claims to have developed the level 10 gene cultivation fluid reliable? How dare they say that they will be able to develop the level 11 gene cultivation fluid of higher quality soon? Don't they feel that they are just trying to impress the crowd?" Chapter 32:13. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Opportunity and Turbulence, it's that powerful? Xianxia was shocked. The level 9 liquid could allow a black hole to enter the origin, while the level 10 liquid could allow the origin to enter the Grotto Heaven. That was true in theory, but it might not be effective in the first try. Even in the early stages, the Starry Sky experts who used the gene cultivation liquid to break through the bottleneck of a major realm often had to try many times before they succeeded, let alone in the later stages. But now, this newly developed level 10 liquid had helped that Starry Sky expert break through on the spot. This was definitely not a coincidence. It seemed that this family was telling the truth. They had indeed made great progress in the research of the gene cultivation liquid, setting a new milestone. The path of technological enhancement in the human camp had ushered in a new opportunity. It was about to shine brightly. Cultivation power, physical power, and spiritual power. These were three different kinds of power, all of which would eventually reach the pinnacle. Xianxia had originally cultivated three paths at the same time. In the past, he mainly cultivated the hollow dimension technique, while his physical power and spiritual power were only supplementary. Now, he was only temporarily adjusting the direction of his focus. Thinking of this, Xianxia's heart calmed down and he quickly made a decision. He had the primordial divine dragon's bloodline to temper his body, and with the help of the gene fluid to break through the shackles of the human body, he would definitely improve at a godly speed on this path of body cultivation. Now that the latter part of the hollow dimension technique is missing, the path of cultivation is cut off. Before we find the next part of the technique, we can only go on the path of body cultivation to break the shackles of the physical body. However, the gene cultivation liquid after level 9 has been monopolized. This situation is too passive. Our lifeline is in the hands of others, and we will be restricted in the later stages. At this point, Xianxia's eyes flashed. The gene cultivation liquid must be in our own hands. If others can make it, why can't we? You want to develop the gene cultivation liquid yourself? The wretched mosquito slayer nodded. This idea is feasible. And now that the opportunity has presented itself, we can't miss it. In the human camp of science and technology, there are many families that develop the gene cultivation liquid. Each of them has different secret techniques. If we can combine the secret techniques of each family, we will most likely have a greater breakthrough. Unfortunately, the human race has always been like this. Be it inheritance or secret techniques, they have never shared them. The concept of the big families is too deep-rooted. But this time is different. The success of the level 10 liquid is like a bomb that has touched the nerves of all the families. The family that developed the level 10 gene cultivation liquid is the name of Tuoba Art. And is. They obviously want to use this opportunity to obtain some secret techniques from other families to create the gene cultivation liquid in the later stages. Therefore, after the release of the level 10 gene fluid, the Tuoba family has issued a call for all the top families in the three empires to gather on the Heaven Warring Planet to discuss. At this point, Mosquito Slayer narrowed his triangular eyes and grinned at Xianxia. The Shenyuan family of the heavenly underworld planet is one of the families that received the invitation. If you are going to the heavenly underworld planet, you better keep a low profile when you meet the Xianyuan family. I heard that a few days ago, there were angry roars from the Xianyuan family from time to time. The chosen wealthy son-in-law has been womanizing again and again. Every time, he makes such a big scene. He is simply unscrupulous. This matter has become a laughing stock in the heavenly underworld planet. Old man Xianyuan is furious. Hearing this, Yi Xian suddenly had a headache. This must be caused by the news of his marriage with the ugly woman in the 6th palace of the 10 absolutes. Previously, there was the disturbance of concubine Mei ordering him to quickly return to the dynasty to complete the marriage. Not long after, there was another. It was inevitable that the Xianyuan family would be laughed at. Although it was all a misunderstanding and Yi Xian was innocent, he was not without responsibility. When he first visited the Xianyuan family, it was just a normal visit, but he gave them a level 9 colored gene cultivation liquid. Who would have thought more about it? Therefore, this misunderstanding was getting bigger and bigger, bringing confusion to the Xianyuan family. Yi Xian felt a little guilty. No matter what, I must go to the heavenly underworld planet. Haven't I been sent away? Well, it's fine if I don't use the title of prince. It's just a change of identity. It's no big deal. After the follow-up itinerary was set, Yi Xian quickly asked about the current situation of the human race in the 3rd universe. Whether it was the change in the Death Star field or the disturbance in the 6th palace of the 10 absolutes before he returned, it was no small matter. You still have the nerve to ask this. The entire Wan Luo Federation is about to collapse because of you. Old Devil Mosquito Butcher rolled his eyes at the mention of this matter, and then explained everything clearly. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. In short, the situation was too chaotic, and it was more serious than he had imagined. First of all, the various races of the Federation in the 2nd universe had launched an attack at the same time. They had suffered heavy losses this time. Only a few starry fortresses with a diameter of 100,000 meters had escaped from the fleet stationed in the Death Star field, and almost all of them had been wiped out. Now, it was basically certain that the formation of the Death Star field was caused by the 6th palace of the 10 absolutes, Xianxia, in order to nurture a clone. Even if the 10 absolute celestial palace kept denying it, the various races of the Federation in the 2nd universe did not buy it at all. They put pressure on the Wan Luo Federation headquarters and demanded severe punishment. Otherwise, they would not give up and would withdraw from the Federation. They even claimed that they would not rule out the possibility of war with the 10 absolute celestial palace. In fact, in addition to the various races of the Federation in the 2nd universe, the crisis and pressure that the 10 absolute celestial palace faced included the Tianji clan in the 1st universe, as well as the immortal dynasty in the human race's science and technology camp in the 3rd universe. The Tianji clan had also suffered heavy losses this time. Although there was no movement at the moment, they were definitely brewing some kind of big move. The internal strife in the Federation this time was a rare opportunity. If the various races of the Federation in the 2nd universe and the 10 absolute celestial palace really fought, the Tianji clan would most likely take advantage of the situation to invade. The dynasty was obviously very angry. In the face of the revolt of the various races of the Federation in the 2nd universe, the immortal dynasty, which was also part of the human race's formation palace, had actually remained silent. Putting aside the fact that Xianxia had forced the dynasty's direct bloodline Prince Long Xian into a marriage alliance, and wanted to borrow the dynasty's power to resist the various races of the Federation in the 2nd universe and resolve the crisis. Just the truth of the formation of the Death Star field and the accidental exposure of the undead Dark Phoenix was enough to make the dynasty dissatisfied. The 3rd universe was shared by the human race. Because of his own selfish desires, Xianxia had actually destroyed such a vast star field. It was really hard for people to accept. And the exposure of the undead Dark Phoenix undoubtedly proved that the 10 absolute celestial palace definitely had some kind of shocking arrangement. This was not an ordinary starry sky beast, but an existence that only existed in some ancient legends. It was evil and ferocious, like the desolate evil dragon and other ancient life forms. It represented calamity and destruction and was extremely inauspicious. But it was hidden deep within the ancestral land of the 10 absolute celestial palace, which was shocking. And this was only the 6th palace of the 10 absolute celestial palace. What about the other 9 celestial palaces? Did they also have a similar ancient existence hidden in the snow? What did they want to do? Chapter 32:14. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless fantasy translation. It was terrifying to think about it. In short, Xianxia is in deep trouble because of you this time. His efforts were in vain, and the destruction of the Sixth Palace's ancestral land is a small matter. The key is that you have implicated the entire Tenju Celestial Palace. Apart from the external crisis from the Everlasting Dynasty and the Second Universe Federation, the Tenju Celestial Palace is already in chaos internally. At this point, the expression on Old Devil Mosquito Butcher's face became more and more strange. That devourer treasured body should have been refined into a doppelganger by you, right? Although Xianxia strongly denied it and insisted that the doppelganger was yours, he was framed as a scapegoat. But no one believes this kind of talk. Even Tianju Palace asked him to personally capture the person. Obviously, they also have some doubts. However, after the devouring doppelganger escaped that day, there was no trace of it. Even Feng Duanfeng was the same, completely disappearing. It is said that Xianxia has been like crazy in recent days, mobilizing all the experts of the Sixth Palace and doing their best to search. He is going crazy. Oh, by the way, your wife seems to have disappeared too. On that day, the undead Dark Phoenix's pursuit failed and returned to the collapsed Sixth Palace's ancestral land. Someone saw her being taken away by a black light that emitted a strong dark aura. Since then, she has disappeared with the undead Dark Phoenix. It is said that when the Braised Egg Spirit heard about this, he vomited blood on the spot. Braised Egg Spirit. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment. The image of Xianxia's bright head that had been blasted into a black sparrow by the Thunder Origin Pearl immediately surfaced in his mind. He immediately felt awkward and rubbed his nose, too embarrassed to say anything else. Isn't it just a braised egg spirit? I didn't expect you to have such a method. It's simply amazing. The mighty Qianquan of the 15th realm couldn't recover. I guess he will be like this in the future. Until now, he still has an oily black head. Old Devil Mosquito Butcher laughed even more wretchedly. That scene must be very enchanting. It's a pity that I didn't see it with my own eyes. Sigh, a braised egg spirit running around like crazy, crying. Just thinking about it makes me drunk. It's a rare sight. Cough. Couldn't recover? Could it be that he was struck so badly that his form? As this thought flashed through his mind, Yi Xian felt even more embarrassed. He coughed twice and quickly changed the topic. That's right, what is the origin of that undying Dark Phoenix? Is it very shocking? In any case, it shouldn't have appeared in the current world. It's related to the Desolate Era. I won't say much about it, as I don't know much about it. If you want to find out more about it, you can ask around. How would I dare to talk about it? At the mention of this, Old Ghost Mosquito Butcher became serious for once. His face was solemn. Yi Xian didn't know if it was an illusion, but he clearly caught Old Ghost Mosquito Butcher glancing at his left chest. That was where the tattoo of the zombie lantern was. As his heart trembled, he suddenly remembered that the Mad Mosquito Emperor seemed to have said something similar. Originally, he said that he would give Yi Xian a good fortune, but later, when he learned about the existence of the headless infant corpse, he laughed at himself. The Old Ghost Mosquito Butcher in front of him was obviously the same. Could it be that he had also sensed something? The reason why he stayed by Yi Xian's side and refused to leave was all because of the headless baby corpse? Was the so-called heaven measuring spell so powerful that it could deduce the mysteries of heaven? If so, Old Ghost Mosquito Butcher must know the origin of the headless baby corpse. Yi Xian's heart skipped a beat. He almost asked more questions, but at the thought of the Mad Mosquito Emperor, he finally gave up. These two old guys were equally mysterious. The former immediately shut up when the headless baby corpse was mentioned. How could the latter be an exception? It would be a waste of time to ask, and it would only alert the enemy. It was better to pretend that he didn't know and find a chance to beat around the bush later. As for the undead Dark Phoenix, according to Old Ghost Mosquito Butcher, it seemed to be related to the Desolate Era. This was too shocking. Yi Xian was shocked. Was it really a creature of the Desolate Era from the same era as the giant golden dragon and the desolate ancient Yuxia? Yi Xian's mind raced as he recalled the battle of the Desolate Era that he had seen several times in the inheritance scenes. Vaguely, he did catch a wisp of aura. In the battle in the Desolate Era far away in the inheritance scenes, it was exactly the same as the aura of the undead Dark Phoenix that he had felt in the Sixth Palace of 10 Ultimates. And it was very likely that the relationship between the two was not bloodline inheritance. It was very likely that they were the same existence. An undead dark phoenix from the Desolate Era actually lived until now? Not only did it survive the Great Battle of the Desolate Era countless years ago, but it was also related to the 10 Ultimate Celestial Palace, the overlord of the human cultivation camp today? A chill suddenly rose from Yi Xian's back, almost making him shudder. If all this was true, he would be in big trouble. In the Great Battle of the Desolate Era that he had seen in the inheritance scenes of the Heaven-Falling Bow, the existence suspected to be the undead dark phoenix in the distance was clearly the power of the enemy camp. Although his strength was not comparable to the likes of the desolate ancient Xianxia and the golden divine dragon, he was definitely not weak. He should be on the same level as Lord Void Ladle, a top-notch mighty figure second only to the supreme desolate ancient. Yi Xian did not dare to provoke such a terrifying existence. Even if its strength was far less than before for some reason, and the strength it showed was only beyond the 15th realm of heaven and earth, what if it recovered in the future and returned to its peak strength in the Desolate Era? Besides, since the undead dark phoenix had appeared, who could guarantee that there were no similar creatures of the Desolate Era hidden in the ancestral lands of the other 9 palaces? All this was extremely frightening. Yi Xian did not dare to think too much about it. His back was already dripping with cold sweat. What was the secret behind this? How could it be related to the enemy camp of the Desolate Era countless years ago? What was the relationship between the 10 Ultimate Celestial Palace and the enemy camp of that battle? What was their plan? There is no need to worry about the devouring doppelganger. He can protect himself. Let him be alone in the cultivation camp controlled by the 10 Ultimate Celestial Palace for a while and grow quickly. After pondering for a while, Yi Xian instructed the wretched mosquito slayer, "As for me, since I am going to leave for the Heavenly War Empire, don't reveal the news of my return to Triumph City, lest Xianxia is attracted. He knows the details of the devouring doppelganger. If he can't find him there, he will most likely turn around and kill his way here. So what if he comes? I already have old scores to settle with him. Why should I be afraid of him?" When Xianxia was mentioned, the wretched mosquito slayer's face immediately sank. There was obviously an old grudge between the two, which made Yi Xian have various guesses in his mind. A demon had an old grudge with the 6th master of the 10 Ultimate Celestial Palace. This matter was indeed fanciful. Of course, you are a mighty figure of heaven and earth. Naturally, you are not afraid of him. Yi Xian rolled his eyes. Not only him, Xianxia? Even if the undead dark phoenix is attracted, it doesn't matter, just drive it away. Ugh! Old devil mosquito slayer was speechless, but he was still as shameless as before. He grinned at Yi Xian, his wretched aura blowing in his face. Get ready. Ask Naples to send me some gene cultivation fluid. I want everything from level 1 to level 9. Chapter 32:15. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Breaking the shackles. Yi Xian didn't know much about the details of the gene cultivation fluid research. Many of the core technologies were kept secret by some of the big families. Even if they were all stored in the Devouring Systems database, he could only gather some well-known information. Of course, if he wanted to obtain the core secret techniques in the hands of the big families, he could use his personal space communication system to hack into the other family's internal star network and steal it directly. In fact, this was one of the many plans Yi Xian had in mind when he embarked on the path of gene fluid research. In a nutshell, the genetic cultivation fluid was actually a type of super-energy biological potion that was blended with various heavenly materials and earthly treasures in proportion. These heavenly materials and earthly treasures could be some spiritual herbs and spiritual medicines in the universe, or some minerals that were melted through special means and mixed in. There were even materials such as the essence, blood and bone marrow of those void ferals. In short, it was extremely complicated and could be said to be all-encompassing, containing countless changes. Anything was possible. In the entire human race's science and technology camp, there were countless families and forces that researched the gene cultivation fluid. Even some individual cultivators were passionate about this path and never tired of it. However, the research forces and families of the countless big and small countries under the 3 big empires could only concoct level 1 to level 7 fluids. Level 8 fluids could only be concocted by a few of the top families in the 3 big empires' imperial capitals. As for level 9 fluids, only a few of the top families on the imperial capital's immortal planet could concoct them. Even the Shenyuan family on the heavenly underworld planet did not have this ability. The concoction of the gene fluid required a huge amount of natural treasures. The purity and ratio of each type had extremely strict requirements. When all these requirements were mixed together, The changes were simply unimaginable. Therefore, the difficulty of concocting the gene fluid would increase exponentially with every level. The difficulty was certain, but the most important thing was still the foundation and experience. However, this time, the Tuoba family of the Heavenly Battle Empire's imperial capital, Heavenly Battle Planet, had actually skipped the accumulation of experience needed to concoct a level 9 fluid. They had directly obtained the ability to concoct a level 10 fluid. Even the top families on the imperial capital's immortal planet were left behind. This matter not only shook the entire empire and shocked everyone, but in the eyes of some existences, there were many suspicious points. Without a doubt, it wouldn't be long before all the top-notch families in the entire dynasty that were researching genofluids gathered on the Heaven Battle Planet. Yi Xian had long since understood this, so he was not in a hurry to set off. If he wanted to make some gains on the Heaven Battle Planet, he needed to make some preparations before setting off. Sharpening the axe would not delay the work of chopping wood. Not long after Mosquito Butcher left, Naples and the others arrived and chatted with Yi Xian for a while. In the end, they left behind a small space box and left. The small box contained the genetic cultivation fluid that Yi Xian needed. It contained everything from level 1 to level 9. Although the level 9 liquid was precious, it was not easy to concoct it. The top families on the Undying Star could only concoct 10 vials of it every year. The entire human race's science and technology camp could only produce a few dozen vials of it. Even so, aside from the normal consumption, the dynasty would leave behind some of it every year as a reserve resource. Even the Wan Luo Federation's contribution point exchange warehouse had a lot of it. Yi Xian had exchanged for 3 vials in one go. From this, one could roughly estimate the amount of level 9 liquid in the dynasty's treasury. It was not enough to squander freely, but for some important members of the royal family, 10 vials could be easily obtained. This time, before Yi Xian left the Undying Star and was sent to the Death Star field, not only did he extort a lot of resources from the dynasty through Uncle Kong's efforts, he also personally went to the 5 princes and extorted them one by one. In the end, he took away a huge amount of resources from the Undying Star, and the genetic cultivation fluid was one of them. Before establishing Triumph City, Yi Xian had only kept some of the treasures. The rest were all given to Naples as reserve resources for the development of Triumph City. In this small space box, there were 10 vials of level 1 to level 9 liquid. It was enough for Yi Xian to use. The genetic cultivation fluid stimulated the human body's blood and cells to unearth their potential, causing genetic changes and breaking the shackles of the human body. This would allow the evolution of life levels and the transformation of strength. This was an independent evolution system. Even though Yi Xian was now a black hole-level existence, if he wanted to embark on this path of genetic evolution, he would still have to start from the level 1 liquid. Different levels of genetic cultivation fluid had different colors. The level 1 liquid was as red as blood. Although its energy was not very strong, it was very unique. The level 1 liquid stimulated the human body's potential and completed the first transformation of the cell's genes. It was equivalent to opening the first door on the path of genetic evolution, allowing ordinary people to step into the hall of genetic evolution and become a star core rank, 1 starry sky powerhouse. Yi Xian was now a powerful existence in the black hole level, so the energy contained in the level 1 liquid did not have much effect on him. Yi Xian did not expect the level 1 liquid to increase his strength in any significant way. This was indeed the case. The stimulation of the level 1 liquid on his flesh was very weak. If he did not feel that all the cells in his body were slightly numb, he would even suspect that the first vial had failed. After that, Yi Xian swallowed the vials one by one. The first vial was effective, and in less than an hour, he had swallowed a total of 8 vials. Yi Xian did not feel anything after swallowing the first 7 vials. Only when he swallowed the last vial of the level 8 liquid did he finally see the effect. The level 8 liquid could allow a peak galaxy level 9 existence to directly step into the black hole level 1 existence. Although Yi Xian was already at the black hole level 1 existence, that was the power of his cultivation and not the power of his physical body. After swallowing the last vial of the level 8 liquid, he immediately felt as if all the cells in his body were being strongly stimulated. Apart from that, he could even faintly feel the invisible chains that represented the shackles of the human body's potential. They were in his body, entangling all the cells in his body, imperceptibly imprisoning his strength. They were all over his body. Finally, as the strong stimulation of his cells gradually faded, Yi Xian clearly felt that these invisible shackles had lessened a little. This was the effect of the level 8 liquid. Yi Xian stopped after that. He was currently unable to consume the level 9 liquid. Its effect was to allow a peak galaxy level 9 black hole level 8 starry sky expert to directly break through to the origin level 1 level 9 origin level. Yi Xian's physical body was only at the black hole level 1, so it was still too early. He had to wait until his physical body reached the peak galaxy level 9 black hole level 1, before he could continue to consume the level 9 liquid and step into the origin level in one go. The evolution of my physical body's physical body has begun. Furthermore, my physical body's physical body has synchronized with my cultivation. I have also reached the black hole level 1, so the next step is to use all kinds of methods to push my physical body's physical body all the way to the peak galaxy level 9 black hole level 1.